On a full moon night, the sky shimmered with countless stars, casting an ethereal glow over the scene. A gathering of numerous knights stood in anticipation, their armor reflecting the moonlight. Suddenly, a commanding voice pierced the air. The commander knight rallied his comrades, urging them to attack and vanquish the figure they deemed a demon. The so-called demon, driven by an unyielding determination, swiftly charged toward the horde of knights. Closing in on the commander, who was issuing orders, the demon unleashed a powerful swing of his sword, bringing a swift end to the commander's life in a single strike. Without hesitation, the demon, now standing amidst the fallen, unleashed a potent ability, his hand pressed firmly against the ground. In an instant, a haunting purple fire engulfed all the knights present, extinguishing their lives with merciless efficiency. Overwhelmed and exhausted, the demon sank to his knees, his breath ragged. It was then that he sensed a presence approaching. He turned his gaze to see a female knight with fiery red hair approaching him. Wearing a pained expression, she confronted him, addressing him as Nox von Reinharfer, and demanded to know why he had made a pact with the devil and betrayed them. Nox, who was still catching his breath, looked ahead and countered her accusation. He smiled faintly and stated that from their perspective, it might seem like a betrayal. However, he asserted that it was they who had betrayed him, not the other way around. The female knight, filled with frustration, implored Nox to stop arguing and simply tell her when he had become so broken. In response, Nox began to explain that the beginning of his journey was like a crash landing. Suddenly, a notification popped up on monitor and informed Yu Chan, the player behind Nox, that he had successfully cleared the first part of a game called Inner Lunatic, with a total clear count of 27. Yu Chan expressed satisfaction with his achievements, acknowledging the acquisition of valuable items and the successful completion of hidden quests. Yet there was a somber reality lurking in the background. He had received the news that he would die the following month. Reflecting on the past, 2 years prior, Yu Chan had visited multiple hospitals, seeking answers about his condition. The doctor's explanation had been unsettling, advising him not to panic and simply listen. Despite undergoing numerous tests, the results remained consistent, leaving him with little hope. The doctor had prescribed pain relief medication, suggesting he take them when the pain became unbearable. Alone in his room, Yu Chan reflected on the passage of time, realizing that 2 years had already slipped by. As he glanced at the calendar, a sudden bout of illness struck, causing him to vomit blood. Staring at the crimson stains on his hands, a profound understanding washed over him. Yu Chan accepted the harsh reality that his days were numbered, and he acknowledged that dwelling on the inevitable wouldn't change the final outcome. Yu Chan was feeling isolated and devoid of social connection, heard a series of notifications, and saw that they were some hospital appointment confirmations. He couldn't help but express his loneliness, realizing that no one had reached out to him after his memory loss, and he had no one to reach out to in return. Additionally, his deteriorating health prevented him from venturing outside, further intensifying his isolation. Glancing at the papers on his desk, he saw various documents related to late-stage cancer support groups, church flyers, and hospice options. Overwhelmed by the emotions welling up within him, Yu Chan discarded the papers, and some tears escaped his eyes. Turning his attention to the monitor in front of him, Yu Chan noticed Lunar Lunatic prompting with the question of starting a new game. He contemplated his limited options and decided that this was all he had left. With a sense of resignation, he entered the player's name as Carl. Yu Chan, lost in thought, contemplated the kind of character he should create this time. He weighed the options, considering the possibilities of a mana sensitivity genius and swordsmanship and combat genius. However, a warning message appeared, cautioning him about the penalties associated with choosing multiple genius traits. It urged him to select only one or fewer genius traits to avoid those penalties. Noticing that the neutral trait was empty, Yu Chan's attention was drawn to the negative trait listed as terminally ill. He laughed, realizing that he and his character were both afflicted with this condition. Despite this revelation, he decided to proceed and accepted the game's prompt to start with the chosen character. Suddenly, a strange sensation overcame Yu Chan, causing him to fall from his chair. Fear gripped him as he wondered if he was truly dying at that moment. On his monitor, a message displayed that character creation was successful. He thought death was something he was accustomed to, but he at least wanted to die the way he wanted to. A notification appeared alerting him that his character's name had been forcibly changed. Shortly after, another notification appeared, indicating a synchronization level of 4%. Then it increased to 6% and further climbed to 19%. Finally, the synchronization abruptly halted at 71%. Another notification appeared, announcing that the character settings were completed. As he awakened, Yu-chan found himself in a state of disbelief. He surveyed his surroundings with astonishment, wondering if this place could truly be what he thought it was. In search of answers, he approached a nearby mirror, observing his reflection intently. A sense of familiarity washed over him, and he came to a startling realization that he had become the worst character known as Nox von Reinhofer in this accursed game. Nox von Reinhofer, the youngest of 5 siblings in the Reinhofer family, was a member of the infamous organization Lunatic. Throughout history, the Reinhofer family had produced exceptionally talented individuals skilled in magic and swordsmanship. However, Nox stood as an exception, an untalented outcast within his own family. Haunted by resentment toward a world that denied him the gifts bestowed upon his siblings, Nox made a fateful decision. He entered into a forbidden contract with the devil, ultimately transforming himself into the most despicable villain in the inner Lunatic story. Gazing at his altered appearance in the mirror, Yu-chan couldn't help but question the reality before him. It felt surreal, as if he had stepped into a dream where he had become Nox. But his excitement grew as he unexpectedly encountered a stat window. He observed the information displayed within the window, revealing his basic details. His name was Nox von Reinhofer, a 14-year-old male human with darkness as his main element. However, his enthusiasm quickly diminished as he noticed his stats. With disappointment, he questioned the low value of only 2 points in stamina. Nox's attention then turned to his traits. He discovered a neutral trait called Void Revelation, which piqued his curiosity. However, his spirit sank as he read through his negative traits. Terminally ill, curse of the weak, frequent sickness, cold hands and feet, and possession. The realization that he was terminally ill in both his real life and this new world left him disheartened. The system also displayed that he had only 1 year of lifespan remaining. Nox reflected on his past actions, trying to make sense of why he had chosen to create a character with a terminal illness, someone who faced imminent death and had no support. Upon further contemplation, he began to understand his underlying motivation. He wanted a character that mirrored his own experiences, someone who could empathize with his struggles. Little did he know that he would eventually become that character himself. Suddenly, a notification appeared, indicating an unread mail in his mailbox. Nox's curiosity compelled him to investigate its contents. The mail began with a greeting, addressing him as Yu-chan, his previous name, but then it corrected itself, saying that it should call him with his new name Nox now. Nox was surprised and questioned how the system knew his name. Yu-chan was a name given to him by his parents, whose whereabouts he was unaware of. Nox couldn't help but question if the entity that put him here held the key to unlocking his lost memories. The system acknowledged that Nox wouldn't remember them, but conveyed the need to deliver a message. It greeted him with a nostalgic, "Long time no see," leaving Nox astounded. The system went on to acknowledge Nox's achievements over the past 2 years, affirming that he deserved to be where he was now. It offered a warm welcome back, leaving Nox in a state of disbelief. Nox couldn't believe what he was hearing. The idea that he was no longer in his old world, and that this new reality was his new existence, seemed impossible to accept. The system responded, acknowledging that there were many aspects of its identity it couldn't disclose, but it expressed a desire to assist Nox. Nox questioned the notion of help. Before he could fully comprehend the situation, the system suggested that he join the Elden Academy, where he could strengthen his forces and strive to follow the main story as closely as possible. According to the system, the complete truth would naturally unfold. As the system mail started to disappear, Nox exclaimed in surprise and asked if that was it. In a state of worry, he tried to gather his thoughts. He realized that he had been reborn as the final boss of the game, Inner Lunatic, but now he was being told to follow the main story. Regardless of how he interpreted it, this simply meant that eventually he would meet his demise. Nox's thoughts raced as he contemplated his situation. Even if Inner Lunatic had become his new reality, he refused to give up on regaining his memories. He was determined to follow the main story and uncover the purpose behind his existence in this world, all while ensuring his survival. For that purpose, he was willing to embrace his role as a true villain. As he reflected on his past life, Knox realized that not much had changed. 2 years before losing his memories, he had been afflicted by a terminal illness. Each moment had been a reminder of his impending death, and fear had consumed him. The only difference now was the shift in setting to a familiar world he knew well. Curiosity compelled Knox to inquire about the current date. When the system displayed February 4, 1812, he felt a sense of urgency. Time was not on his side, and he had to act swiftly. With determination burning within him, he resolved to embark on his 28th clear attempt. As Knox attempted to open the door, his wrist bones throbbed with intense pain, turning red. To his surprise, a notification appeared, revealing a negative trait activation. It informed him that due to the effects of his constant sickness, he had acquired wrist inflammation level 1, urging him to rest and allow it to heal. In disbelief, Knox muttered, "The fuck?" As Knox made his way down the hallway, he clutched his hand tightly, plagued by an unsettling thought. What could be wrong with his body? He couldn't fathom how fragile he seemed. In an unexpected turn of events, a maid collided with him, causing her to lose her balance and the tray of dishes she was carrying to shatter on the floor. The maid looked up in surprise, her eyes widening upon recognizing Knox as she muttered his name. "Young Master Knox!" Knox's gaze met hers, and at that moment, he felt a flash of recognition. This maid with her brown hair and light orange pupils, could it really be Rona? Memories stirred within him, fragmentary and vague, but he recalled that Rona had spoken ill of Knox behind his back. He thought, could this seemingly innocent girl, who now stood before him with tears welling in her eyes, have been the one talking behind Knox's back? Knox decided to grant her forgiveness, but not without a warning. An evil grin crept across his face as he contemplated the consequences of any future mistakes she might make. Rona, with tearful eyes, understood the gravity of the situation and nodded in acknowledgement. Knox noticed the tranquility around him, and the surprised gazes of the butler and maids confirmed that his act of madness had slipped his mind. He questioned himself, contemplating the kind of life he had led thus far. Rona looked at Knox with caution and asked where he was going so early. Knox simply replied, stating that he was heading to the practice hall. The butler and maids reacted with shock upon hearing his response, unable to comprehend his sudden decision. Knox, with a smile on his face, added that he wanted Rona to accompany him. Fear instantly gripped Rona's thoughts as she wondered about Knox's intentions. Together, Knox and Rona walked towards the practice hall. In his mind, Knox recognized the paramount importance of survival. Having experienced the chilling embrace of death, he had become resolute in his desire to avoid it. He understood that adapting quickly to his new circumstances was crucial. Deep in thought, Knox assumed a contemplative posture. He knew that despite the challenges ahead, he still held a chance. With 27 previous playthroughs, he possessed extensive knowledge of the game's hidden aspects. The game Inner Lunatic had gained immense popularity worldwide, with its captivating story that pitted angels against demons, along with the Empire. However, what truly set Inner Lunatic apart was its extensive customization options, allowing players to adopt different styles of play. While lower-ranked traits like Ordinary and Talented could be assigned multiple times, the highly sought-after Genius traits were typically limited to a single assignment. However, he possessed 2 Genius traits, a rare occurrence in the game. Within Inner Lunatic, there existed a concept known as trait penalties. By exploiting the system's attempt to analyze traits beyond the player's limits, Knox managed to assign 2 Genius traits. The first was Swordsmanship and Combat Genius, which granted exceptional sword skills and allowed the user to reach the pinnacle of swordsmanship. The second trait, Mana Sensitivity Genius, heightened the user's sensitivity to magic, enabling more efficient spellcasting. Knox contemplated the vast array of other useful traits at his disposal. As a main character perk, Insight bestowed the ability to view the status window of other characters, providing valuable information. Additionally, Master of Acting allowed the user to effortlessly adapt to any situation, making it particularly advantageous in his current circumstances. Furthermore, steel mentality, when utilized during battle, enabled the user to maintain mental fortitude, keeping a cool and composed demeanor. Nox assessed his negative traits, acknowledging the significant challenges they posed. Among them, the terminally ill stood out the most. The other negative traits he possessed were the curse of the weak, frequent sickness, cold hands and feet, and possession. For those afflicted with cold hands and feet, entering icy areas without a warming skill was nearly impossible. As for frequent sickness, Nox anticipated fainting at least once every chapter due to its effects. Nox contemplated his situation, realizing that he had no other choice but to proceed step by step, accepting the challenges that lay ahead. Observing Nox standing still, Rona, with a hint of disbelief, wondered if he truly intended to enter the practice hall. Moments later, her surprise grew as she witnessed Nox walking toward the gate. Nox pushed open the gate, determined to address the first obstacle, the curse of the weak. This curse afflicted users from birth. It reduced the growth rate by half, and made the users twice as susceptible to enemy debuffs. As Nox continued his sword practice, a sense of despair washed over him. Regardless of how much he pondered the situation, he could only arrive at one conclusion: he was doomed. Just like reading the beginning of a story, exhausted and lying on the ground, Nox struggled to catch his breath. The realization that he couldn't even swing the sword more than 10 times hit him hard. He lamented the immense difficulty imposed by the curse of the weak. Looking around, Nox found solace in the availability of numerous weapons. This abundance could be attributed to the Reinharnated family's origins, which centered around the sword. Known as the High House of the Blade and Darkness, the Reinharnated family had earned this title due to their mastery of imbuing attribute magic into their dark blades, allowing them to slash through their enemies with great proficiency. All of this was made possible by the legendary Commander's Blade, also referred to as the Tyrannical Blade of Darkness. This ancestral sword had been passed down through generations of family heads, continuing the tradition and legacy of the Reinharnated family. Nox contemplated the benefits of being part of a noble family, excluding the swordsmanship. One of the greatest advantages was the abundance of money. With a delighted expression, he expressed his admiration for the wealth possessed by the Reinharnated family. As one of the prominent noble families in the story, their wealth was so substantial that even their seemingly useless young son Nox had enough money to sustain a life without ever having to work. Nox believed that his father, Teo, likely didn't care much about how wisely he managed his finances. After all, Nox didn't possess that kind of character. He was the youngest son of a noble family, and his character archetype was clear. With his legs trembling, Nox managed to stand up. He recalled Rona's fearful behavior and her plea not to involve her in anything strange. A few minutes earlier, Rona had brought a wooden sword and a towel and informed Nox that they were ready for him. However, she couldn't help but wonder if he truly intended to engage in exercise. Nox realized that there was no one around and motioned for Rona to come closer. Rona displayed a frightened demeanor, questioned his intentions, and expressed concern that he might hit her. Nox, caught up in his frustration, exclaimed and asked her, what was she talking about? He then grasped Rona's ear, pulling her closer, and whispered something in her ear. After hearing Nox, Rona shouted in surprise, questioning Nox's plans. She looked at him, expressing her disbelief that his ideas were merely garbage. However, Nox commanded her to figure it out and sharply told her to be quiet. Rona replied with a trembling voice and acknowledged his request. As Rona left to retrieve the requested items, she couldn't help but think to herself that young master hadn't changed a bit. Meanwhile, Nox contemplated the time it would take for Rona to complete her task, hoping that everything would be ready by tomorrow. He poured himself some tea, pondering a solution to his curse and the need to increase his stamina. Suddenly, a voice interrupted his thoughts. It was the head butler, Rodwell de Ernark. Nox was taken aback as he recognized Rodwell, who held a significant position as one of the main managers of the Reinharnated estate. Rodwell served as an advisor to Nox's father, Theo von Reinharnated, who was also the family head. Nox realized that dealing with Rodwell wouldn't be as straightforward as with others, as he held a position of authority within the family. Nox pondered the encounter, considering it a potentially significant challenge. He wondered if Rodwell had noticed something unusual happening and pondered his own means to handle the situation. Knox activated his positive trait of Master of Acting and questioned Rodwell's presence, saying that the head butler should be serving the family head. Head butler Rodwell informed Knox that he had received orders to share some news with him. Knox curiously inquired about the nature of the news. Head butler revealed that Knox was instructed to participate in tonight's dinner. Knox was unfamiliar with the family and the situation, hesitated at the idea of having dinner with the family head. He contemplated the request, realizing his lack of knowledge about the family dynamics. Knox responded to head butler, expressing his reluctance to attend the dinner. Head butler internally pondered about the master's intentions behind ordering young Master Knox to participate in the dinner. Head butler then reported that the lady of the Styliner family had arrived and was seeking night training. He emphasized that if Knox refused to participate, it would likely anger the family head. Knox let out a sigh, acknowledging the circumstances. He understood the importance of following his father's orders and reluctantly agreed to attend the dinner. Head butler observed Knox with a questioning gaze and thought aloud that something was off about him that day. Knox, somewhat defensive, asked if there was something the head butler wanted to say. The head butler acknowledged Knox's unusual behavior, noting that Knox had never shown much interest in wielding a blade before. He inquired about the reason behind Knox's decision to visit the practice hall on his own. Knox, with a stern expression, firmly asserted his independence and authority, warning the head butler not to overstep his boundaries as a mere butler. He made it clear that his actions and intentions were his own to decide. Taken aback, the head butler apologized, recognizing that he had crossed a line. As Knox walked away, the head butler's gaze was filled with questioning thoughts, and he realized the need to report this encounter to the family head. Inside his room, Knox closed the door and took a moment to catch his breath. He reflected on the unexpected confrontation, feeling relieved that possession didn't activate. Knox shifted his focus to the mention of the young lady from the Styliner family, wondering why she was present in their household. Amid the dinner, Knox found himself being mocked by twin brothers Hartz and Alan. Alan expressed surprise and disbelief that Knox had shown up, indicating that he wouldn't enjoy the meal because of it. Hartz questioned whether Knox still had regrets about being part of the family, to which Alan agreed. Alan directly addressed Knox, expressing his disbelief at seeing him there and accusing him of inappropriate behavior with one of the maids. Hartz joined in, stating that Knox was a lost cause. Despite the mocking, Knox remained calm, recognizing that he hadn't done anything to warrant such treatment. At that moment, Theo von Reinhafer, the family head of the Reinhafer family, and Knox's father, entered the scene. Knox acknowledged his presence, knowing his role within the family. Following Theo's arrival, a beautiful girl with red hair introduced herself as Talia von Stilliner. Family head mentioned that Talia had requested night practice and would be spending time at their estate, and urged everyone to greet her warmly. Knox gazed at Talia and contemplated her significance. In the game Inner Lunatic, she was the hero and the character who opposed the future villain, Knox. Knox recognized that in the near future, it would be Talia who would eventually stab him in the chest with a sword. Family head Theo acknowledged Knox's presence at the dinner and suggested that since everyone was there, they should proceed with the meal. During the dinner, Knox noticed that Hartz and Alan were engaged in a discussion. Hartz then proposed to their father, Theo, that it was time to make a decision regarding the next person to enter Eldine Academy. Theo considered the suggestion and agreed that it was indeed time to make that decision. Eldine Academy held great importance within the game Inner Lunatic, as it was where pupils faced various challenges and fought demons, forming the main storyline. Knox realized that attending the academy was crucial for him. It would allow him to gather his own allies while following the overall structure of the story. However, family head Theo clarified that Eldine Academy only allowed 3 individuals from each family to attend. The limitation was intended to restrict the influence of the nobles. Theo mentioned that he had already used 2 slots for his first and second sons, which meant that the Reinhafer family had only 1 more entrance ticket available for the academy. Knox listened to the family head's announcement and thought about the importance of obtaining the remaining entrance ticket to Eldine Academy. He realized that he needed to do whatever it took to secure that ticket before he could focus on forming alliances. Knox then spoke up and concluded that the family head was proposing a fight between the brothers. The family head was taken aback by Knox's quick response, as he had not anticipated him being the first to react. Confirming Knox's assumption, The family head declared that a duel would take place in the practice hall 1 month from now to determine the next attendee. The duel would follow their family traditions for such decisions. Hearts took the opportunity to mock Knox, urging him to stay quiet to avoid embarrassing himself. Alan joined in, belittling Knox and stating that someone like him, who had never wielded a sword, stood no chance against them. Knox calmly took a sip of his wine and responded to Alan's taunts, stating that they could discuss it after he emerged victorious. Alan shouted back, expressing his disbelief in Knox's abilities. Meanwhile, Knox maintained his focus and understood that the upcoming duel was another trial he needed to face in order to secure the entrance ticket. He refused to be swayed by the taunts and insults directed at him. Confident in his own abilities, Knox looked ahead and boldly declared that he would be the one to attend Eldine Academy. This surprised the family head, while it further infuriated Hearts and Alan. Talia, the young lady from the Stilliner family, chuckled at Knox's declaration and commented on his confidence. Knox glanced at her but internally felt a sense of unease, realizing that he might have drawn the attention of someone he shouldn't have. Inside the family head's office, Teo acknowledged that something had indeed changed about Knox, as reported by the head butler. Teo pondered the cause of this change, wondering if Knox had been possessed by a demon. Regardless, he acknowledged that Knox had captured his attention. Teo instructed the head butler, Rodwell, to continue keeping a close eye on Knox. The family head was curious about the transformation in Knox and wanted to understand the reasons behind it. Meanwhile, Knox was running at the practice hall, sweating and panting heavily. Observing the scene, one of the maids commented on his frequent visits to the practice hall. Another maid mentioned the upcoming duel in 1 month, sparking curiosity among them about Knox's sudden dedication to physical training. Knox, overhearing their conversation, wondered why he was able to pick out their words so clearly and questioned if he had a special trait. At that moment, he received a system message indicating a slight increase in his stamina stat. Knox expressed disappointment at the small increment and reflected on the significance of stamina for him. He recognized that his low stamina was his greatest obstacle and a hindrance to unlocking his full potential with the trait swordsmanship and combat genius. Knox understood that the requirement to utilize the trait was to have his stamina stat reach 4. However, due to the curse of the week, it had taken him a month to increase his stamina by only 1.9 points. Knox felt frustrated with the curse of the week, a trait that reduced his growth rate by half. Despite putting in a lot of effort, he had only managed to increase his stamina by a small amount, and the terminal illness trait further hindered his progress. Knox realized that he needed to exert 4 times as much effort compared to others just to see minimal improvements. The difficulty of his situation weighed heavily on him. However, Knox decided to put aside those concerns for the time being. Just then Rona arrived there, pushing a moving tray filled with the materials Knox had requested the previous day. Knox acknowledged her arrival, realizing that she was faster than he had anticipated. With the supplies now available, he felt confident about making progress. Contemplating how to reach a stamina level of 4, Knox reassured himself that there were no issues. He believed that his knowledge would allow him to overcome any obstacles. Curious about the purpose of the materials, Rona questioned why Knox needed them, expressing concern about their dangerous nature and their expensive cost. She pointed out that the scroll seemed to be the only useful item among them. Knox simply replied that people didn't know how to use those materials effectively, implying that their usefulness was hidden from others. As Rona looked at him with a questioning expression, Knox picked up a bottle of elixir and drank it in one go. Panicking, Rona shouted that it was poison. Sweat covered Knox's face as he acknowledged the potency of the poison. A system notification appeared, indicating that Knox had consumed the poison of the 3-headed gorgon, and his health would temporarily increase by 1.5 times. It also informed him that his death counter had started, with 9 minutes and 59 seconds remaining until death. As Rona grew increasingly panicked, she exclaimed that she would call the head butler for assistance. However, Knox urged her to wait, and proceeded to eat the core, ignoring her pleas. Rona's worry intensified as she exclaimed that the core was not meant for consumption. A system notification appeared, indicating that Knox had consumed the core of the golem and would slowly be petrified as a result. Another notification followed, stating that a hidden piece had been activated and that the poison of the three-headed Gorgon was reacting with the golem's core. Nox was pleased with the results and thought that his plan was working perfectly. The golem's core was originally used to petrify people or increase their defense quickly, or to create artificial golems. However, when combined with the three-headed Gorgon poison, it had a special effect. Notifications continued to appear, indicating that a special effect had been activated and the poison of the three-headed Gorgon had been diluted, causing the negative trait, Curse of the Weak, to disappear. Nox was ecstatic, as the curse that had plagued him was now gone. However, Rona, with tears in her eyes, looked at Nox and expressed her concern, fearing that he might soon die. Ignoring her worries, Nox suddenly began to unbutton his shirt, causing Rona to cover her eyes in embarrassment and exclaim in shock. After opening a few more buttons on his shirt, Nox proceeded to pour an elixir bottle onto his head, resulting in a series of notifications. The dew of the Remembering Fairy countered the petrification effects of the golem's core, and a hidden piece was activated. Nox was granted the temporary trait, Blessing of Growth, through the interaction between the dew and the golem's core. Nox was pleased with the outcome, as his plan had unfolded just as he had intended. The notification indicated that the Blessing of Growth would double his stat growth until his stamina reached 5. With only a scroll remaining, Nox picked it up and used it. Another notification appeared, stating that he had activated the Rapid Stamina Growth scroll, which doubled his stamina growth rate. Nox contemplated the results, realizing that he had successfully eliminated the curse. And with the Blessing of Growth mitigating the debuffs from the terminally ill trait, coupled with the effects of the scroll, his current growth rate should be twice that of most people. This meant he should be able to increase his stamina stat at a faster pace. Suddenly Rona jumped on Nox, causing him to nearly lose his balance. She expressed her concern with teary eyes, questioning if he was okay. Nox was slightly annoyed and told her to bring him a towel. However, seeing Rona's distress, he decided to go easy on her now that the curse had been lifted. With a smile, Nox assured Rona that he was fine. She continued to worry, suggesting that he should rest and consider calling the head butler. Nox reassured her once again, insisting that he was all right. Curious about his next course of action, Rona inquired about his plans. Nox simply replied, "Run!" With that, Nox and Rona sprinted through the practice hall, catching the attention of Talia, who stood nearby and observed their actions. Talia, who had been observing Nox, questioned why someone as weak as him would accept a match against his brothers. Her maid Emma tried to advise Talia against staring at Nox and reminded her of proper etiquette. However, Talia interrupted Emma, expressing her frustration and disbelief at Nox's lack of sword skills and his refusal to accept help from the other knights of Reinhafer. Talia couldn't understand why she was so bothered by Nox's situation, considering that she believed he would simply end up getting beaten up in a month. Despite her thoughts, Talia couldn't shake off her annoyance. Determined to address the matter, Talia walked towards the practice hall, telling her maid Emma that she would be right back. Approaching Nox as he rested, Talia introduced herself, stating her name. Nox was surprised by her approach and wondered why she had come looking for him. He asked her what she wanted, mentioning that he had heard her name before. Talia felt flustered by Nox's cold attitude and thought to herself that he must have been surprised by her beauty. Talia confronted Nox, questioning his confidence in being able to defeat his brothers, and asked if that was the reason why he had accepted the match. She asked him if he thought that he could defeat his brother just by running like this. She then offered her assistance, expressing her willingness to help him. However, Nox calmly rejected her offer and told her to get lost, showing no interest in her help. Talia was taken aback by Nox's response and exclaimed in disbelief, expressing her indignation at being treated this way when she was offering her support. On the sidelines, Rona observed the exchange and thought that if Nox continued to speak in such a manner, it would make girls dislike him. Talia gave up on trying to persuade Nox and started to walk away from the practice hall, clearly upset with his refusal and dismissive attitude. Nox used his insight ability on Talia, gaining access to her stat window and learning more about her abilities and traits. He observed that Talia had impressive stats, particularly in terms of stamina, which was higher than most grown males. While her potential may not match the 3 sword masters or the 4 great mages on the continent, Nox recognized that she had the potential to reach their level and could effectively combat demons with her fire attribute magic. Nox also knew that in the near future, Talia's fire attribute magic would awaken to white flames and be used to burn the demonized version of himself. He understood that if he managed to make Talia his ally at this point, it would drastically alter the future events of the story. Therefore, he needed to find a way to navigate the original story while avoiding his own death. He pondered whether it was possible to maintain a good relationship with someone who would eventually be responsible for his demise. 1 month later, Talia walked through the hallway. She pondered about the praise she had received for her quick learning abilities and the expectations tied to the Stillreiner family's talent. However, she couldn't help but feel inferior compared to her sister's exceptional talent. Talia questioned her own potential and wondered if she could ever become a knight. She reminded herself of the qualities and principles that a knight must possess. They should never be consumed by greed, maintain a frugal lifestyle, and be willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good. In addition, they must master the art of swordsmanship and adhere to proper form to become a true knight. Talia pondered the possibility of Nox being able to defeat his brothers, who had trained for years, by solely focusing on cardio exercises. She expressed her doubt, believing that it was unlikely for him to succeed. The next day arrived, and Nox and Alan stood in the center of the ring, surrounded by a crowd of spectators. Many people had gathered to witness the official duel that would determine who would earn the right to enter Eldine Academy. Facila, the first wife of the family head, was also present at the scene. Meanwhile, the head butler, who was standing nearby, heard the family head calling out to him. The family head inquired about his thoughts on the outcome of the duel. The head butler, after considering young Master Alan's past performances, stated that it was highly likely that he would emerge victorious. The family head agreed, assuming the same. However, head butler couldn't help but wonder if the family head expected something different. Despite acknowledging that young Master Nox had undergone changes, the butler remained skeptical about his chances of winning. He considered it outrageous and impossible. Having once walked the path of a knight alongside the family head, the butler understood that the art of the blade could be intricate or straightforward. The level of skill one attained and the dedication one put into their training determined their proficiency. There was only one way to surpass someone who was previously ahead and force them to kneel, and that was the insurmountable wall of overwhelming talent. The butler pondered whether young Master Nox possessed such innate talent. Interrupting the butler's thoughts, the family head spoke, acknowledging that the possibility might not be zero. There was a chance that the youngest, born with Reinhafer blood, possessed the talent of a sword emperor. As Nox stood on the duel grounds, he received a notification indicating that his trait, swordsmanship and combat genius, was inactive. In frustration, he contemplated his seemingly unlucky streak and questioned whether his luck stat was actually in the negatives. Despite his efforts, he couldn't reach a stamina stat of 4. A few days earlier, while Nox was running, he received multiple notifications activating his trait effects and gradually increasing his stamina stat by 0.1, and now his stamina had reached 3.8. Rona, who was running alongside him, expressed her exhaustion and questioned whether she had to continue running with him. Nox, while wiping sweat from his face, replied that it wouldn't be fun without her and jokingly mentioned who would take care of him if she didn't. Rona, with teary eyes, suspected that she heard him say something else. Nox then handed her a towel and assigned her another task, to which Rona responded with a pouting face. Playfully, Nox accused Rona of cursing him in her mind, but she denied it and accidentally bit her tongue in the process. Nox chuckled at the thought of Rona having good stamina and contemplated using his insight ability to view her stats. To his surprise, Rona's stamina stat was 4.5, surpassing his own despite his dedicated training. Nox was astonished by the strength of the Reinhafer family, where even a maid was stronger than an average man. Rona reminded Nox that it was already evening and suggested he rest before the duel. Nox panted heavily, felt the pressure of time, and thought that he didn't have enough time to increase his stamina. Back at the duel ring, Alan addressed Nox and proposed that he should just give up. Despite Nox being considered the shame of their family, Alan expressed hesitation in beating him too severely. Nox responded, stating that Alan didn't seem to want him to give up. Alan shifted his attention to Talia, the daughter of the Stillreiner family, and expressed his desire to impress her. He believed that Nox would assist him in achieving that goal. However, Nox expressed uncertainty about whether it was a wise decision. Observing Alan's stamina stat of 8, Nox realized that he couldn't defeat him using ordinary methods and contemplated alternative approaches. As the referee announced the duel between Nox and Alan for the admission ticket to Eldine Academy, he emphasized that both of them must accept whatever the results may be and that objections would not be tolerated. Nox felt nervous, realizing that everything hinged on this duel. His main objective was to find his memories and discover the sender of the letter, as he knew that after the 1-year grace period, his life would be in danger. The referee asked one last time if both of them were ready, and then he announced the beginning of the duel. Alan initiated the attack with a sword strike, but Nox swiftly dodged it by moving to the side. Alan quickly followed up with a kick, which Nox blocked using his sword, but was still pushed back. Alan commended Nox's defense, and the duel continued with Alan launching another series of attacks, forcing Nox into a defensive position. Nox realized that the only consistent aspect of the damned inner lunatic game was that if he lost, he would have to give up everything. However, if he could win, he could regain control over his destiny. At that moment, a notification appeared, indicating an increase in Nox's stamina stat by 0.1. Nox's face lit up with a smile as he saw this development, realizing that winning the duel could grant him everything he desired. Alan saw Nox smiling and questioned if he had hit Nox's head too many times, and continued his relentless attacks, suggesting that perhaps hitting Nox some more would make him feel better. Meanwhile, Alan's mother, Faecilla, observed the fight and remained confident that her son would be the last child of the family to enter Eldine Academy. During the duel, Alan launched a powerful attack that almost caused Nox to lose his balance. At that moment, Faecilla overheard a remark expressing disdain for the situation. She turned her attention to the source and found the family head, who had a disappointed look on his face. Faecilla thought to herself that one day, this family would witness her true power. The family head expressed disappointment, stating that he had been looking forward to seeing how Nox had changed and concluded that Nox's current performance was underwhelming. The head butler, concerned for Nox's well-being, offered to stop the duel, knowing that it would take Nox a long time to recover if they continued. Family head compared the talents of Alan and Hartz to his first son, Garen, and found them lacking. He reminisced about the ability to dominate his opponents with overwhelming power, wielding the dark sword of domination. The family head pondered who would inherit it in the end. The family head made up his mind and rose from his chair, deciding to put an end to the duel. On the duel ring, Nox received a message that his stamina had increased by 0.1, followed by the activation of his trait Swordsmanship and Combat Genius. Overwhelmed with excitement, Nox burst into laughter, surprising Alan and drawing the attention of the family head. Nox then activated a skill, and a system message appeared, saying that the skill hour of the genius had been activated. Nox's thoughts raced as he recalled a saying that distinguished geniuses and the talented each had their own unique time. At that moment, he felt that it was his time, a genius time. With the skill active, Nox perceived everything around him in slow motion. It was as if time had decelerated, giving him a distinct advantage in the duel. He realized that while the enemy's movements appeared slower, his own actions were faster, granting him the ability to react swiftly and execute precise maneuvers. It was hard to fully utilize this skill, but his innate trait, Swordsmanship and Combat Genius, had been activated, which allowed him to use the skill. Nox launched a powerful attack against Alan. As a result, Alan's sword was knocked out of his grip, leaving him defenseless. Nox's determination grew as he saw his victory within reach, firmly believing that he would emerge triumphant in the duel. As the sword slipped from Alan's grasp, a surge of anger filled his gaze as he directed it toward Nox. In response, Nox met Alan's furious gaze with a smug expression and remarked that the duel was fun. Overwhelmed by frustration, Alan could only manage a bewildered exclamation. Nox's mind raced, acknowledging that he couldn't afford to let his guard down. The skill he employed had a limited duration of 5 minutes, leaving him with the urgency to conclude the battle within that time frame, regardless of the circumstances. Nox's face lit up with a confident smile as he addressed Alan and Hartz, stating that he had been holding back until now, finding the encounter tedious due to their lackluster performance. He proposed a swift resolution by urging them to attack him simultaneously. The unexpected request from Nox left both Alan and Hartz in a state of shock, their minds struggling to comprehend the situation. Knox then turned towards the family head and made a plea, seeking permission to engage in a 2-on-1 battle against his brothers. The family head's expression mirrored a mix of curiosity and doubt as he assessed Knox's demeanor. Meanwhile, Talia's voice trembled with concern as she whispered, questioning Knox's current actions. She couldn't fathom his motives. Observing Knox's newfound energy and determination, the family head sensed that something had changed about him. He was intrigued and decided to grant Knox's request, allowing the unconventional sparring scenario. Just then, Fasila rose from her seat, prepared to intervene, but her plea went unnoticed by the family head, who was resolute in his decision. With a simple command, he signaled the commencement of the battle, setting the stage for what was to come. Alan reclaimed his fallen sword from the ground, his movements fueled by determination. Hartz was seething with annoyance and resented Knox for daring to humiliate them in front of their father. Knox stood before them and maintained a serene smile, ready to confront them head-on. Hartz issued a warning, indicating that Knox should be prepared for what was to come, and without further delay, both Alan and Hartz launched their assault on Knox simultaneously, their swords clashing with a resounding clash. The air crackled with intensity as the battle ensued. Amidst the clash of steel, Alan, in a desperate attempt to strategize, gestured to Hartz, indicating that he should close in on Knox's left side. However, Hartz expressed his frustration and abruptly told Alan to shut up. Knox displayed remarkable skill and skillfully defended against their relentless attacks, blocking and parrying with precision. At that moment, a message appeared before Knox. It indicated that the Hour of the Genius had bestowed its special effect and had increased his low-grade swordsmanship of the Dark family's proficiency. A smile crept onto Knox's face, recognizing that he was now able to see the sword clearly. Seizing the opportune moment, Knox swiftly retaliated by countering their attack and landed a calculated strike on Alan's shoulder. Both Alan and Hartz, visibly exhausted, panted heavily as they struggled to catch their breath. In contrast, Knox stood composed, seemingly unaffected by the physical toll of the battle. He observed their perplexed expressions, aware that they must be questioning how he had transformed from a symbol of family humiliation into this formidable adversary. Their silent exchange was interrupted by Knox's voice, reaching Alan and Hartz as a reminder not to lose focus during their spar. Fueled by determination, Knox pressed on with his assault. Despite the high stakes of the spar, he felt joy in wielding the sword itself, and a smile spread across his face. Knox's swift sword swing captured the attention of Talia, the family head, and others present, eliciting surprise from their wide-eyed expressions. Hartz, who bore the brunt of the attack, struggled to process the impossible feat unfolding before him. Despite his attempt to block, Hartz fell to the ground, defeated. Alan and Hartz, both on their knees, uttered their frustration through gritted teeth. A message appeared before Knox indicating the end of the Hour of the Genius skill. Knox stood victorious and breathed heavily, the weight of the battle apparent on his fatigued form. Seeing her sons defeated, Fasilas shouted out in concern for Alan and Hartz, her worry evident in her voice. Knox turned his gaze towards the referee and silently inquired if the victor had been decided. The referee responded with an affirmative nod, confirming Knox von Reinhofer as the triumphant combatant. With a formal announcement, the referee declared Knox's victory to the gathered audience. Alan, consumed by anger, clenched his fists in frustration, unable to accept the defeat. Knox released his grip on the sword and shifted his focus to the family head, who was wearing a content smile on his face. Expressing his gratitude, Knox bowed respectfully to the family head before announcing his departure. As Knox made his way towards the exit, Talia locked her gaze on him, a determined expression etched on her face. Realizing the urgency of the situation, she felt compelled to reach out to Knox without delay, her mind set on the necessity of their immediate conversation. As Knox stepped outside, a sudden bout of coughing overcame him. He glanced down at his hands, only to find them stained with blood. Realization dawned upon him as he realized that he had used the skill for a little too long. Knox was well aware of the significant flaw within the skill, Hour of the Genius. If he exceeded the skill's allotted duration, a debuff called Recoil would take its toll. Just then, a message materialized, confirming the repercussions of the skill's recoil. It revealed that his life had been diminished by a duration of 2 days and 17 hours. Knox comprehended the gravity of this debuff, understanding that it permanently reduced his lifespan and made him more vulnerable to illnesses. Taking a moment to collect his thoughts, Knox let out a relieved sigh, grateful that the recoil hadn't manifested in front of others. He acknowledged that if his condition had been exposed, his admission to the academy might have been jeopardized. However, his respite was short-lived as his attention was drawn to a voice that called out to him. Knox turned toward the source of the sound and found Talia standing there. Her inquiry pierced through the air as she asked if he had sustained any injuries during the spar. Knox's thoughts raced as he realized that Talia had discovered his condition. He lamented the fact that it had to be Talia of all people, and he couldn't allow Theo to find out about the skill's rebound. His mind raced with concerns, trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Before Knox could say anything, Talia interrupted him, expressing her surprise that he had emerged victorious in a fight between siblings despite his frail condition. Knox was taken aback and questioned her words. In response, Talia blushed and confessed that she had misunderstood him. In the past month, she had observed Knox clumsily swinging a wooden sword and had never once witnessed him actually wielding a real sword. She had assumed his victory was due to his innate talent, so she decided to ask him how he had awakened and trained such a talent. However, as the duels concluded, she noticed a change in his demeanor when he was alone. Confused and concerned, she questioned herself about the true nature of Knox's abilities and the reason behind his current state. Inwardly, Talia came to a realization. She understood that Knox was not the good-for-nothing person that rumors portrayed him to be. Instead, he had dedicated himself to hard work and training in order to secure victory at all costs. When Talia witnessed Knox coughing, her worry took hold, and she reached out her hand toward him, asking if he was okay. However, Knox swatted her hand away, saying that he didn't want to be touched. Internally, he felt embarrassed, recognizing that his 2 years of obsession with gaming had hindered his ability to interact effectively with others. Moreover, he knew that Talia was a character who would kill him, which made it even harder for him to interact with her. Talia wore a sorrowful expression and apologized to Knox. Perplexed, he questioned the reason behind her apology. Talia explained that she hadn't realized how serious Knox was about the sword, as she had heard that his body had been weak since birth, leading her to believe he focused solely on stamina training. She expressed regret for misunderstanding him and acknowledged that portraying himself as a good-for-nothing was likely not his intention. She mentioned that Emma had taught her that people can make mistakes in their perceptions. Knox pondered how to respond to Talia's genuine honesty. He recognized her sincerity, which mirrored the traits he had observed in her character within the game. Despite possessing the qualities of a knight, she was the daughter of a proud and esteemed duke family, making it challenging for her to admit when she was wrong. Finally, Knox spoke, urging Talia not to disclose his bleeding condition to others if she held such a view of him. Talia confidently assured him that she wouldn't reveal his secret. Knox observed her response and thought that perhaps he didn't need to worry about others discovering his situation. Turning away, Knox walked off, instructing Talia to keep her promise. As Talia watched Knox's departing figure, her face flushed red with a mixture of emotions. In family head Teo's office, the family head expressed his satisfaction with his earlier conjecture. He turned to the head butler and inquired about his opinion on Knox's talent. The head butler expressed his views, stating that he initially struggled to comprehend why Knox allowed himself to be beaten. However, after observing the other children of his age and other young masters, the head butler concluded that Knox was the most exceptional among them. Family head agreed with the head butler's assessment and expressed his suspicion that Knox might possess additional hidden talents. He directed the head butler to closely monitor all of Knox's actions, emphasizing that their sole task should be observing Knox, regardless of his activities. The head butler acknowledged the order, affirming his commitment to carrying out his duties diligently. Family head wondered if Knox had enough talent to inherit the supreme black sword. He then acknowledged his limited time left and reassured the head butler of the importance of his ongoing task. The head butler bowed respectfully and pledged to give his utmost effort in fulfilling his responsibilities. Inside Knox's residence, he received a message indicating the completion of the tutorial quest and his victory in the first fight. Knox expressed his realization that this world had become a reality while retaining game-like elements. Another message appeared, announcing rewards for his achievement, which included 3 free stat points. Nox was pleasantly surprised and exclaimed that he had hit the jackpot. However, his excitement quickly waned as he realized that after an entire month of rigorous running, his stamina had only increased by a mere 2 points. He lamented, expressing his disappointment and suggesting that they should have granted him these rewards much earlier. But the stat he needed to invest these points in was not stamina, it was luck. Nox opened his status window and allocated all 3 points into the luck stat, raising it from 7 to 10. He reasoned that luck was valuable, especially in the inner lunatic game, as it was a stat that couldn't be easily increased through hard work. Nox, who was feeling eager to test the value of his increased luck stat, received additional messages regarding benefits, including mass clear rewards, a random gacha voucher, and a one-time use skill confirmation voucher. Nox expressed relief that the benefit system was still in place, appreciating the opportunities it provided. Nox eagerly decided to use the gacha right away, and a gacha machine appeared before him. He found it quite alien to see it in person. Nox rotated the handle, hoping for a high-ranking reward. He remembered that with his high luck stat, there was a 95% chance of getting an intermediate rank or above. He knew that the basic rank and ranks below were white, the intermediate rank was silver, and the advanced rank would be gold. The highest rank would be rainbow. Nox hoped for at least a gold rank or a higher rank reward. His excitement grew as his reward appeared, and he exclaimed in joy. As he opened the scroll, new messages appeared, identifying the rank and revealing that he had obtained an advanced trait called Supreme Ruler's Awe. Nox couldn't believe his luck and expressed his happiness at acquiring such a powerful trait. The skill information revealed that it was an active skill of advanced rank with no attribute. Its effect was that those with a lower status value than him would have all their stats reduced by 20%. Nox considered it a jackpot and smiled at the fact that it was a debuff skill. However, he was aware that there was another reward awaiting him. Nox then received a message asking if he would like to use the one-time use skill confirmation voucher. He knew that the skill he would obtain from this voucher was already decided, and it was one of the hidden pieces he needed to achieve his goal. He decided to save it for when Theo gathers all the siblings in the estate. Nox realized that it was almost time for Grain von Reinhofer, the second son of the Reinhofer family, to return to the estate after completing his training to become a knight. Nox acknowledged that he had to find the hidden piece and handle Grain, leaving no time for rest. However, he felt relieved that he probably didn't need to worry about Talia anymore, considering her character and the promise she made. He believed there was no reason for her to approach him again. To his surprise, the very next day, he found Talia standing in front of him. Nox questioned why she was there after they had settled everything the day before. Talia, looking down, spoke in a low voice, but Nox couldn't understand her, so he asked what she was trying to say. Talia then looked up at Nox with a confident expression and asked him how he had become so strong so quickly, and how she could become stronger too. After hearing Talia's question, Nox remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed upon her. He then began walking and revealed that Talia had secretly observed him training for an entire month. Talia's expression turned puzzled as she questioned the notion of secrecy. Without hesitation, she swiftly followed Nox, urging him to wait. Talia insisted that they at least have a spar or that he should tell her how he trained. Reflecting on his knowledge of Talia, Nox recalled that she was a character driven by a strong desire to gain recognition from her sister. Nox paused and turned to face her. He reminded her that before asking how to train or seeking advice on becoming stronger, she should first think about her own talent. Talia looked at Nox, seemingly contemplating his words. Nox thought to himself that he had never comforted anyone before and wondered what he should say. Taking a deep breath, he added, "Don't compare yourself to others." With that, Nox left, leaving Talia behind. Talia expressed her surprise at his words and disappointment as Nox walked away. Meanwhile, Nox glanced back briefly and wondered if she would come after him. He didn't want her to witness him obtaining the hidden piece. Finally, Nox arrived at a place where his 2 brothers and his father, the family head, were waiting for him. Nox wondered if this was the Reinharfer family's barn, renowned for raising the finest horses on the continent. The family head acknowledged their presence and mentioned that the 3 young masters might already have an idea as to why he had called them there. He explained that they had been summoned to select a horse that would become their lifelong companion. Knox realized that this was the moment he had been waiting for. Horses were revered as the most sacred creatures in both the continent and within the Reinharfer family. If you've decided to become a mage or a knight, you choose a horse when you're young to have as a lifelong companion. Eldin Academy taught horse riding, and as the game progressed, there would be large-scale wars where horses played a crucial role. If a horse died, one would have to raise a young horse again. Since transportation magic was expensive, horses became a vital mode of transportation. Knox believed that it was essential for him to select the best horse for himself. Interrupting his thoughts, the family head announced that Knox, as the winner of the duel, would have the first choice. He emphasized that Knox had only one chance. This caused annoyance for Alan and Hartz. Knox strode into the barn, his determination unwavering as he set out to find the horse he sought. The family head pondered which horse the youngest member would ultimately select. Knox carefully surveyed the horses, finding them quite adorable. Suddenly, his eyes rested upon the one he had been diligently searching for. This particular horse appeared diminutive and seemingly feeble. Undeterred, he approached the horse and boldly announced his decision, surprising not only Hartz and Alan, but also the family head, who wore a perplexed expression in response to his choice. The family head decided to give Knox another chance to choose. Knox thought to himself that this opportunity was a reflection of how the others doubted his decision. However, he remained determined. Using his insight ability on the horse, Knox triggered a message stating that the target's stat window was loading. Soon, the stat window appeared, revealing that the horse had a high rank, belonged to the obsidian species, and had the main element of darkness. Knox knew that most summoned creatures were categorized into ranks, and depending on their growth, they could ascend multiple ranks. This particular horse displayed the potential to achieve at least a higher rank. What made it even more remarkable was that it was an obsidian horse, an exceedingly rare breed among many others. The term obsidian refers to a type of igneous rock. Knox was certain that if the family head had been aware of this fact, he would have undoubtedly claimed this exceptional horse. However, Knox was aware that the horse's current state made it less enticing despite its potential. Upon careful examination of the horse's traits, Knox discovered several positive attributes such as steel strength, talented army horse, and courage. However, these traits were currently inactive due to a debuff. The horse did possess a neutral trait called Unchanging Heart. Unfortunately, the most prominent and concerning trait was the negative attribute labeled Expected Death, which was currently in effect. This trait indicated that the horse had a mere 2 days, 16 hours, and 12 minutes left to live. Knox considered the negative trait to be more troublesome than a terminally ill trait in some aspects. Despite this, he firmly stated that he would not change his mind and would choose this horse. He believed that with his knowledge, he could save it. The family head's concern and disappointment were palpable as he questioned Knox's decision and thought that Knox might be projecting his own emotions onto the horse. In the family head's view, Knox appeared to be emotionally driven and weak, leading to a deep sense of disappointment. Expressing his hope that Knox wouldn't regret his choice, the family head began to leave. Despite Alan and Hartz's attempts to call out to him, their pleas fell on deaf ears. The guards assured Alan and Hartz that they would keep a watch so that they could choose their horses. Knox pondered, wondering if the family head was genuinely disappointed with his decision. But just as he began to delve deeper into his thoughts, the head butler interjected, abruptly interrupting his train of thought and prompting Knox to choose a name for the horse. After a brief moment of contemplation, he settled on the name Carl, the very name he had used when conquering the inner lunatic. It held profound significance for him, making it a meaningful choice. Sometime later, Carl lay on the bed, covered under a bedsheet. Knox had taken the precaution of bringing Carl into his room to ensure his actions remained hidden from others. Knox looked at Carl and recognized the determination in the horse's eyes to keep living, mirroring his own ongoing battle. Knox recognized that Carl, like himself, was fighting to extend his lifespan, clinging to the desire to live a little while longer. Knox called out to Rona and demanded her immediate response. However, before he could finish his sentence, Rona suddenly appeared but stumbled, losing her balance and falling to the floor. She questioned how Knox had known about her presence. Knox playfully accused her of being caught red-handed and teased her about her habitual clumsiness. Knox then instructed Rona to take care of Carl. Rona looked surprised and commented, "A horse in the bed?" She pouted, imagining the daunting task of cleaning up after a horse in such an unlikely place. With a smile, Nox reminded her that Carl was unwell and encouraged her to do her best. Rona glanced at the horse and reluctantly agreed to take care of him. She then asked the horse if his name was Carl and inquired if he was hungry. Nox contemplated the situation, realizing that what was about to unfold would be quite shocking. He wondered if Rona would be able to handle it. 3 days later, in Nox's residence, a loud cry resounded from a room. Rona sat on the floor, cradling Carl's lifeless head in her lap. Overwhelmed with grief, tears streamed down her face as she mourned the loss. Nox watched Rona cry over Carl's death and realized that it was evident since she had put a lot of effort into taking care of Carl. He felt a hint of sympathy for her. However, Nox was already aware that this was going to happen. There was no way Carl could have been saved. Nox approached Rona and urged her to stop crying, emphasizing that her emotions were distracting him. He instructed her to stand up, and though Rona tried to express her despair, her words were stifled by her sobbing. Nevertheless, Nox assured Rona that Carl would return to his side. Rona was confused, and she looked at Nox with a questioning gaze and asked if there was something wrong with his head. Ignoring her remark, Nox told her to move behind him. Nox retrieved a scroll, and Rona couldn't help but question its significance. He then placed it on the ground and acknowledged the need to infuse mana into the scroll. As he poured mana into it, a circle materialized on the ground, emitting a vibrant purple. Witnessing this extraordinary sight, Rona's shock was evident. Meanwhile, a smile graced Nox's face, hinting at his satisfaction with the unfolding events. Rona, bewildered by Nox's abilities, questioned his knowledge of mana usage, aware that such practices were considered illegal. Nox acknowledged his struggles in controlling mana, but chose to continue pouring mana into the scroll. He warned Rona that if she kept distracting him, Carl would die a second time, and it would be all her fault. Understanding the severity of the situation, Rona fell silent, covering her mouth with her hands. Nox recognized the need for utmost concentration, realizing that he was still someone who had yet to awaken his trait of genius of mana detection. Using mana in this empire below the age of 15 was strictly prohibited unless you are from the imperial family. Consequently, compared to other students who start learning mana control at a later age, the descendants of the imperial family exhibit several times more proficiency in magic. Nox thought that the only thing he could do right now was to pour as much mana as possible into the scroll. As Nox continued infusing mana into the scroll, he sensed a faint energy emanating from his palms, recognizing it as mana. A smile crept onto Nox's face as he found the situation intriguing. He decided to utilize the one-time use skill confirmation voucher to ensure that he executed the magic correctly, as the magic he was about to employ belonged to the realm of black magic. A message materialized before Nox, indicating that he had obtained the skill Book of the Dead, Necromicron, for one-time use. Another message informed him that Carl, the target, could be revived as an undead. A prompt appeared, asking if he would like to use this magic. Deep within Nox's thoughts, he contemplated the existence of two types of beings that possessed the trait of undead within the inner lunatic world. The first type comprised beings resurrected through black magic or dark mana. The second type consisted of those who were reborn without ego and are reborn as stronger beings. Nox pondered the implications of reviving Carl as an undead, acknowledging that the revived creature would exhibit unwavering loyalty to its master, almost to a fault. However, he recognized that only one family in existence practiced the art of reviving corpses as undead. The Marva's family, known as a family of black mages that controlled the undead. While the Reinhafer family belonged to the Dark family as well, they were a night family. Nox contemplated that if that was the case, then the players that don't belong to the Marva's family would not be able to utilize their skills at all. However, with a knowing smile, Nox revealed that this assumption was not true. He had obtained a one-time use skill selection voucher, which allowed him to acquire the Necromicron, also known as the Book of the Dead. Just as Nox continued pouring mana into the scroll, black hand-like figures started emerging from the circle. The hands reached towards the lifeless body of Carl, covering him. In the midst of this, blood began to drip from Nox's mouth. Concerned, Rona exclaimed, but Nox hushed her, signaling for her to remain silent. Nox persisted, his determination unwavering. However, suddenly, he sprayed blood from his mouth, indicating that his mana was running out. Frustrated, he looked down at his hands, realizing the diminishing energy within him. Yet, as he looked ahead, he witnessed a remarkable sight. Carl standing on two legs, almost floating in the air, enveloped by dark energy. From Carl's mouth, a resounding voice echoed, and Nox received messages confirming the successful activation of the skill. Another message appeared confirming that his pet Carl had been revived as an undead. Panting heavily, Nox wore a triumphant smile, knowing that he had achieved his goal. With tear-filled eyes, Rona called out to Nox, her concern evident. Nox got up and called out to Carl. As Carl approached him, Nox examined his companion's status. He observed Carl's traits, which included positive attributes such as steel strength, talented army horse, and courage. These traits had been inactive due to a previous debuff, but now they were active. Nox also noted Carl's basic information, such as his name, gender, rank, age, race, an undead horse obsidian, and his master's element, darkness. Finally, Nox discovered the negative traits, including the erasure of the expected death trait, and the knowledge that Carl, as a temporary pet for 1 year, would grow at a rate of 1.5 times the normal rate. Additionally, Nox learned that he could summon or dispel Carl depending on his mana. Filled with satisfaction, Nox placed his hand on Carl's head and declared that he would be his master from now on. Nox found himself lost in thought, contemplating his next steps. However, his train of thought was interrupted when Rona unexpectedly jumped and hugged both Nox and Carl. Nox was taken aback by the sudden display of affection and questioned Rona's actions. Rona in tears responded, questioning how Nox could be so reckless with his use of mana. She expressed her concern for his well-being and scolded Carl for his recklessness as well. Carl turned his head away, his eyes closed. Rona was taken aback and questioned Carl, expressing how much she had cared for him. She then asked Carl to spit out the carrot she had given him. In response, Carl let out a defiant neigh. Nox smiled, recognizing the unfolding dynamics between Rona and Carl. He then thought to himself that the hidden piece would be his next target. A few days later, in the middle of the night, Nox ventured out from the territory, holding a map and a light stone. He acknowledged that the road he was taking was similar to the game he had played before. Putting the map back in his bag, he felt relieved knowing that obtaining the second hidden piece of the Reinhofer family was crucial. It would serve as a key to compensate for his terminal illness trait. Suddenly, a sense of unease washed over him, and he glanced back. Seeing that there was no movement, he couldn't help but question his sensitivity. He then reminded himself that this was no longer a game, but a reality. He noticed a wooden sign in front of him, indicating that this was the entrance of the missing child's forest. A warning was written, saying that if young children enter, they may get lost and risk their lives. Therefore, it advised not to enter under any circumstances. Nox thought to himself that he did not want to die a second time. Acknowledging the gravity of the situation and the need for caution, Nox ventured into the forest, receiving messages that warned that he had entered the missing child's forest, and failure to clear this place will result in death. The missing child's forest was situated within Reinhafer's territory and was forbidden to enter. The combination of darkness and dense fog made it challenging even for skilled rangers and pathfinders to navigate through. Nox contemplated the name of the forest, realizing its dual meaning. It was a place that could make anyone feel lost, just like a child, but it also meant that even if full-grown adults kill monsters here, they wouldn't find any valuable artifacts. And the difficulty of the monsters within increased for adults. Nox had died multiple times in his attempts to find the right way to clear the forest, which led him to believe that the missing child's forest had a difficulty rating of at least 2.5 stars, with 5 stars being the maximum. With a wry smile, Nox acknowledged that this game was designed to have the worst difficulty. As he reminisced, he recalled his previous attempts to clear the forest without any knowledge of the items that would appear. He realized that the forest was the perfect challenge for his character's terminally ill trait. Nox proceeded to craft a fire torch and ignited it. The emitted light allowed him to see ahead, and he understood that the crucial key to clearing the missing child's forest lay in the direction of the smoke. More precisely, he had to go in the opposite direction of the smoke. Before embarking on his journey, Nox paused, realizing there was something he needed to do. He turned around and spoke to someone hiding in the shadows, asking them how long they intended to remain concealed and suggesting they reveal themselves now. After waiting for a few moments without a response, Nox sighed, remarking that they planned to hide until the end. Drawing his sword, Nox swung it at nearby bushes, causing a loud cry to emanate from that direction. In Talia's residence, Talia expressed her disbelief that her beauty had failed to captivate Nox. She couldn't comprehend the situation. Her maid, Emma, pleaded with her, using her title, Young Miss, asking her to stop following young Master Nox. Emma explained that if Talia continued her pursuit, she would also face reprimands. Talia reassured Emma, stating that she would ensure Emma wouldn't get fired from the family. However, Emma tried to convey a different message, but Talia didn't grasp it. Later, during nighttime, Emma walked through a hallway, holding a lit candle. She contemplated Talia's talent and how she was respected as the potential next matriarch. Emma wondered why Talia felt inferior to her sister Chell, and why she seemed so impatient. Emma arrived at Talia's room and opened the door, speculating that she should have given up by now and would be sleeping. However, as Emma entered Talia's room, she noticed something was wrong. A sense of horror struck her as she called out, "Young Miss?" In her thoughts, she worried that Talia might have gone to find young Master Nox. Emma's voice echoed through the mansion, urgently waking everyone up. Another person inquired about the commotion, asking what was wrong and what had happened. In the forest, Talia smiled, covering her head with her hands. Nox was taken aback and called out her name. He questioned her presence. Talia got up and chuckled nervously and greeted him. Nox demanded to know why she was there, but before Talia could respond, he suddenly caught her by the waist and pushed her behind him, instructing her to stay there. Confused, Talia called out Nox's name, trying to understand the situation. Just then, they noticed a figure approaching them from the darkness. Talia immediately recognized it as a gray wolf. Shocked, she realized they were in the territory of the gray wolf. Despite having only a dagger at hand, she braced herself for the encounter. The wolf circled around them, displaying an evil smile, aware that it had found its prey. It let out a loud howl, signaling its presence. Nox remained calm, even in this perilous situation. Without hesitation, he swiftly advanced toward the wolf, throwing his fire torch and launching a swift attack with his sword. His strike proved fatal, and the wolf fell down with a single blow. Talia was astonished by Nox's prowess, and couldn't help but think how incredible it was. She marveled at how effortlessly he defeated the wolf, even though it was just one. Nox turned back to face Talia and repeated his question, expressing his surprise that it was her instead of his brothers who followed him. He demanded to know why she was there. Talia stumbled with her response, trying to come up with an excuse, mentioning a night stroll with a nervous laugh. Nox was not convinced and picked up his fire torch and warned her not to lie, threatening to leave her alone in the forest. Caught off guard, Talia grabbed Nox's arm and tried to stop him. Nox looked at her and waited for an explanation. Talia began to explain that she wasn't doing anything strange. She had just noticed how strong he had become and wanted to be strong like him. She saw him through the window and became curious about where he was going. Talia admitted that she had followed him to the forest without thinking much. Nox smiled to himself, realizing three things. Talia held him in high regard, she didn't harbor any hostility towards him, and he found relief in that fact. He sighed, understanding that Talia was still a child who didn't fully grasp the danger of following others late at night. As one of the core characters, he couldn't simply leave her there alone in the forest. Nox sighed once again and instructed Talia to follow him, clarifying that his intention was not to help her, but to prevent any trouble for his family. Talia felt embarrassed and apologized and admitted her mistake. Nox thought to himself that Talia probably wouldn't engage in any more reckless behavior. However, before they could proceed further, Talia interrupted, calling out to Nox. Talia blushed and expressed her gratitude. She looked at Nox and began to say something, but her expression abruptly shifted to shock as she noticed numerous glowing eyes in the darkness. Worry evident in her voice, Talia called out to Nox. He stood with the fire torch in hand, alongside Talia. The flickering light from the fire torch revealed that they were surrounded by a pack of wolves. These wolves had likely been drawn to the location by the loud howl of the wolf Nox had previously defeated. As the wolves closed in around them, Talia grasped Nox's arm tightly, trembling in fear. However, Nox abruptly pulled his arm away from her grip, sternly telling her to stay away. Talia was taken aback by his response, while Nox walked ahead, warning her that she would be in his way when he swung his sword. Deep in thought, Nox acknowledged the presence of unexpected variables and resolved to refocus. This particular area was part of the prologue and did not contain any boss monsters, but an elite monster one rank below the boss would appear. The evolved form of the gray wolf he had just defeated, an elite gray wolf. Nox understood that merely knowing his enemy wouldn't guarantee an easy encounter. The wolves launched their attack, but Nox swiftly retaliated, eliminating them one by one. Nox's attention turned to the wolf standing at the back, realizing the possibility of being driven into a corner. Prepared to defend himself, Nox braced for the incoming attack, reflecting on his past experiences as Yu Chan, playing the inner lunatic and acknowledging his own weakness. In a single strike, Nox successfully vanquished the wolf, letting out a relieved sigh. Talia watched in astonishment, recognizing Nox's incredible sword technique, which she believed to be even more impressive than when he fought his brothers. She speculated whether Nox had slain gray wolves before. However, her expression turned somber as she realized that Nox still perceived her as weak. Suddenly, a howl echoed through the air, capturing their attention. Nox shifted his gaze ahead, knowing that what they had been waiting for had finally arrived. The elite gray wolf. Accompanied by a pack of wolves, the formidable foe made its grand entrance. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the missing child forest, a group of people anxiously searched for Nox and Talia. One of them noticed footprints on the ground, recognizing them as the young master's and Lady Talia's. It was clear that they had ventured into the forest together. Talia's maid, Emma, fell to her knees in shock, realizing the gravity of the situation. She insisted that they needed to enter the forest immediately. However, head butler Rodwell cautioned against such a hasty decision, deeming it impossible. Emma exclaimed in disbelief, questioning his reasoning. Head butler Rodwell thought to himself, aware that the missing child forest was one of the most challenging trials within the Reinhafer family. Despite being renowned as the strongest dark family in the South, the fact that they hadn't managed to clear this particular forest reflected poorly on their competence. It was unknown to them that only children who hadn't reached adulthood could enter the forest successfully, and that it could only be cleared by children. Head butler Rodwell pondered further, wondering why the young master had entered the forest. He doubted that Nox had been bewitched by a mind-controlling monster, as the tracks indicated careful movement, and there were no signs of anyone breaching the estate's strongest mana barrier. This meant that young Master Nox had intentionally entered the forest. Head butler Rodwell admitted to himself that he had been wrong in underestimating Nox's strength and resilience, acknowledging that he was no longer the weak and frail young master from before. With a determined tone, head butler Rodwell explained that there was only one way for Nox and Talia to return. They had to rely on the young master's wisdom to find their way out of the forest. Emma's eyes filled with tears as worry consumed her. She blamed herself, believing that she was the one who had caused the young miss to be in this predicament. As Nox faced the wolves, he observed Talia and noted her ability to maintain concentration despite her fear. He advised her not to attack unnecessarily, warning her of the potential danger and instructing her to stay out of the direct confrontation. He urged her to conserve her strength and use it to escape if she were to come under attack, as it would increase her chances of survival. Nox, however, acknowledged that eliminating an elite wolf wasn't overly risky since its rating was only 2.5 stars. His primary goal was to ensure Talia remained alert and responsive to her surroundings. Examining Talia, Nox thought that she had learned well, though she hadn't reached a level where he could fully trust her to cover his back. Nonetheless, he decided to utilize his skill, Hour of the Genius, intending to dispatch the elite wolf swiftly. To his surprise, Nox noticed the wolf smirking, frustrating him and fueling his determination to uncover the wolf's motives. As one wolf charged at Nox, he managed to defeat it swiftly. However, the other wolves suddenly halted, leaving Nox perplexed. The elite wolf took a seat while the remaining wolves launched a coordinated attack from all sides. Nox fought valiantly, dispatching several of the wolves. Unfortunately, one managed to sneak behind him, poised to strike. Just as the wolf was about to land a blow, a dagger flew through the air, striking the wolf's neck and saving Nox. Nox turned to the side, surprised to see Talia, who had climbed a nearby tree. She cautioned him to be careful. Talia's thoughts raced as she realized that even though Nox had instructed her to flee in dangerous situations, she couldn't bring herself to do so. Nox gazed at her in disbelief, questioning in his mind whether she was truly going to help him. Talia expressed her concern, asking Nox if he was all right and if he was injured. Nox, thinking to himself, was surprised by Talia's assistance. However, his thoughts were interrupted by the growl of a nearby wolf. Reacting instinctively, Nox swiftly attacked, using his sword to kill 2 wolves. He assured Talia that he was all right, to which she expressed relief. Inwardly, Nox realized that it was not the time to be carefree and regretted showing his vulnerable side to Talia. He glanced down at his trembling hands and realized that the recoil was taking its effect. Nevertheless, he remained determined, knowing that the situation wasn't over yet. As an elite wolf approached him, he braced himself, anticipating an attack. The wolf circled around him for some time and suddenly charged toward Nox. However, to his surprise, the wolf passed by him, leaving him astonished. Nox wondered if the wolf had a different plan in mind. Suddenly, the wolf reappeared behind Nox and struck, slashing at him. Nox cursed his slowness and managed to evade partially, but his shoulder was injured. Talia shouted Nox's name in worry upon seeing his injured shoulder. Nox placed his hand on his shoulder, assessing the damage. He couldn't help but question if this wolf was truly a 2.5-star rated creature. Nox realized that the elite gray wolf in reality was smarter and more cunning than in the game. Meanwhile, the elite gray wolf, hidden in the forest, wore an evil smirk. Nox prepared himself for the wolf's next attack, acknowledging his surprise and the wolf's ability to control the other wolves. He also recognized the wolf's utilization of the terrain and geographical advantages. Nox focused his gaze in a particular direction, determined to be prepared. The wolf lunged from that direction, prompting Nox to swiftly swing his sword. In that split second, Nox believed he had skillfully struck his target. However, to Nox's surprise, his sword didn't reach the wolf as it stopped at a short distance. Nox was shocked, and the elite gray wolf looked at him with a cunning smile. Seizing the opportunity, the wolf attacked Nox. Nox realized that the wolf had been waiting for him to make a large swing and expose himself. Attempting to counter the attack with his sword, Nox's expression suddenly changed. He realized that he was facing the recoil of his skill. As the wolf closed in with its mouth wide open, ready to bite him, Nox thought about his overconfidence. Clearing the game multiple times had led him to believe he could do anything, but it was a foolish judgment. Resigned, Nox closed his eyes, feeling helpless. However, he then heard the whimpering sound of the wolf. He saw a dagger lodged in the wolf's eye. Nox was shocked and realized that if the wolf could create an opening, so could they. But the unexpected variable, the one who created the opening, wasn't him. It was Talia. Seizing the opportunity, Nox attacked the elite gray wolf. As Nox's sword pierced through its body, the wolf let out a loud growl and fell to the ground. Exhausted, Nox fell to his knees, panting heavily. Talia called out to Nox, expressing her worry. She then noticed the remaining wolves that were still present. However, upon witnessing their leader's death, the remaining wolves started running away. Talia rushed over to Nox, expressing concern for his well-being. Nox reassured her that he was all right, but he paused, shocked by his own thought. He had almost thanked the enemy who would eventually kill him in the future. Nox looked away and told Talia that there was no need to worry. However, Talia noticed the injury on Nox's shoulder, and with teary eyes, she voiced her concern about his well-being. Nox brushed it off, stating that it was just a slight wound. Talia persisted, expressing her relief that he wasn't injured elsewhere. Suddenly, Talia noticed a spider on her shoulder. Fear filled her eyes, and she let out a loud scream. Nox was taken aback, thinking that there was another monster. In her panic, Talia fell into Nox's arms and hugged him tightly. Nox was shocked and called out to her in a questioning tone, seeking clarification. Talia tightly hugged Nox as she spotted the spider. She held onto him even tighter, causing Nox to almost lose his balance. Nox wondered how long she intended to cling to him and pondered if she was scared of the spider. He flicked the spider off Talia's shoulder and questioned her decision to follow him into the forest if something as small as a spider frightened her. Talia, with teary eyes, expressed her fear of spiders, asking if Nox was scared of them too. Nox smiled and remarked that she wouldn't be able to become a knight with such fear. Talia looked at Nox, their faces just inches apart. She let go of him and blushed with embarrassment and shouted, "No!" Nox responded, noting that she finally got off him. Suddenly, Nox coughed, and Talia expressed concern, asking if he was okay. Nox reassured her and reminded her not to worry. Nox thought to himself, acknowledging that Talia had contributed her fair share. He survived thanks to her, even though he couldn't express his gratitude due to her sudden scream. He then looked ahead and realized that now their goal was to escape the forest. Outside the forest, Emma remained on her knees, crying and confessing that she was the one who killed the young miss. Head butler Rodwell wondered if Talia and Nox didn't make it, realizing that Talia's disappearance would create problems between the two families. He also acknowledged that the Reinhafer family was often criticized for their incompetence regarding the numerous missing children in the area. Just then, a man pointed towards the forest, calling out to Rodwell and informing him that the fog in the forest was clearing. Everyone looked toward the forest in shock as Rodwell realized that the infamous missing child's forest had been cleared. Emma stood up and expressed her belief that if Mana was being lifted, then it could only mean one thing. Head butler acknowledged that her earlier understanding was correct. This view meant that the forest had indeed been cleared, and their speculation had become reality. Emma, with teary eyes, realized that it meant Nox, and had managed to clear the forest. However, before she could finish her sentence, they noticed Nox and Talia emerging from the forest. Someone shouted, announcing that the young master was coming out, and people started discussing the feat of clearing the forest. The incredible sight of Nox emerging unscathed left them in disbelief. Head butler couldn't help but smile, as he was now certain that the hierarchy among the descendants within the Reinhafer family would undergo significant turmoil. Nox, appearing casual, asked why everyone was gathered there. Emma looked at Talia and called out to her, hugging her tightly and expressing how worried they had been. Head butler informed Nox that the family had also been concerned about his disappearance. Nox couldn't believe that the family would worry about someone as useless as him, lamenting that the family's reputation as a dark family was about to decline. Meanwhile, Talia told Emma to stop crying. Emma wiped her tears, grabbed Talia by her hair, and declared her intention to go over the 71 rules of the Stillreiner family once again. She urged Talia to follow her. Talia apologized, but Emma quickly reassured her, stating that she would never dare to blame her, as she was just a lowly maid. She emphasized that the patriarch would personally teach her the rules. Nox observed Emma, and thought to himself that the maid seemed to possess extraordinary stamina. Emma then greeted Nox and thanked him for protecting their young miss. Nox turned his attention to Talia, and acknowledged that even though he hadn't intended to go into the forest with her, she had proven her worth and shouldn't be too hard on herself. Nox entered his room, relieved that the ordeal was over, and placed his hand on his forehead. He contemplated the unexpected presence of Rodwell and the knights waiting outside the forest. He wondered if Talia had something to do with it. Nevertheless, Nox smiled and pulled something out of his pocket, a hidden piece. A message appeared, indicating that he had obtained a new artifact. The Black Flame Ring, categorized as an accessory of low intermediate grade. The ring had the attribute of darkness and provided a boost to stamina and mana. It could only be equipped by those capable of using dark mana. The ring also possessed a special effect. When defeating a target while wearing it, a small amount of their life force could be stolen and converted into the wearer's own. The amount stolen increased with the rank of the defeated target. Nox acknowledged that the Black Flame Ring was the only artifact capable of stealing someone else's life force, but he understood that merely possessing the ring wouldn't guarantee a longer life. Looking at the ring, he reflected on the limitations of extending one's life indefinitely. Stealing only a small amount of life force made it challenging to overcome the terminal illness. He decided to wear the ring, believing that as long as he could struggle and progress, it was far better than a hopeless life on the brink of death. Nox smiled with determination, sensing his life force and mana increasing. Nox turned toward the door of his room and called out to Rona, knowing that she was outside. The door opened, and Rona peeked inside, addressing him as young master. She asked if he was able to see through things, to which Nox responded that he might be capable of it. Rona's face turned red, and she asked if that meant he could see her naked body too. Nox gently tapped her on the head and questioned what on earth she was talking about. Rona exclaimed in pain, wondering why it felt like his finger flick hurt even more than usual. Nox suggested arm wrestling to Rona, who questioned if they were going to do it again. She prepared herself and proposed that if she won this time, he would genuinely increase her salary. Nox agreed, but warned her that if she lost, 20% of her salary would be deducted. They clasped each other's hands and got ready. Rona counted 1, 2, 3. The match began, but Rona's hand instantly touched the table, resulting in her loss. Rona was taken aback and stuttered, wondering what had just happened. She then regained her composure and confronted Nox, suggesting that he must believe it wasn't befitting of a reputable family's son to reduce a servant's meager salary by 20%. Nox waved his hand dismissively and admitted that while it might be true, he was the rumored good-for-nothing of the Reinhafer family, as per someone's rumors. He smiled and stated that he had decided not to care about trivial things like honor. Suddenly he received a series of messages indicating that the effects of his trait, frequent sickness, had been activated. He obtained a wrist fracture level 2 and flu level 1. Nox groaned, frustrated with these negative traits. He then told Rona to forget about the salary reduction and asked her to bring him some ice and a wet towel. Rona noticed Nox's pale face and expressed concern. Nox thought to himself that for now, he would be satisfied with having the ring and that he needed to rest. Suddenly, a hazy memory emerged as a figure declared with certainty that the name was Yu-chan. Nox thought to himself about the 2 hidden pieces he possessed, Carl and the black flame ring. It had been 6 months since he obtained them, but unfortunately, he hadn't had an opportunity to utilize them. The reason was that he had been grounded. Nox let out a sigh and expressed his frustration, stating that he hadn't gotten into any trouble and had even managed to clear the missing child's forest. He couldn't believe he was being punished when he should have been rewarded for his actions. He turned to Rona, seeking her agreement. Rona looked to the side and cautiously replied that, as a maid belonging to the family, she was obligated to speak favorably about the patriarch since it could affect her salary. Nox walked confidently and made a firm promise to Rona that her salary would indeed be reduced if she didn't comply with his preferences. Rona was taken aback by this statement, exclaiming her shock at the harshness of the patriarch and expressing her disbelief at his lack of understanding towards his feelings. Nox, feeling the weight of his situation, found a seat on the sofa and reflected on his current life. He had been working diligently to adapt and live a productive life while observing the growth of Carl. However, he couldn't continue living this way, as he realized that his life was being shortened due to the terminal illness. He glanced at a message revealing that he had only 147 days left to live. Frustrated, Nox thought to himself about the system that seemed more interested in his life than he was, sarcastically thanking it for explaining the situation so nicely. Determined to change his circumstances, he stood up and declared that he couldn't bear it any longer. He resolved to approach his father and seek permission to go out somehow. Just as he made this decision, someone knocked on the door. Head butler Rodwell entered the room and greeted Nox before informing him that the patriarch had summoned him. Meanwhile, the patriarch recalled a memory from the past, where he stood on a blood-covered battlefield facing numerous flying demons. He reflected on the night of slaughter, the devastation caused by the demons, and the humans caught up in the chaos. Opening his eyes, the patriarch acknowledged that someday, one of his sons would likely learn the supreme black sword, but he couldn't rely on probabilities alone. He needed a certain talent, because one of his sons would eventually have to kill him. As head butler entered and reported that the young master would soon arrive, the patriarch expressed his dissatisfaction with the delay and instructed head butler to bring Nox to him immediately. The patriarch acknowledged that even though he didn't know how to clear the missing child's forest, but Nox's ability to accomplish it deserved appropriate recognition. However, rewarding Nox had been delayed due to strong objections from the family's vassals, who doubted Nox's transformation and initiated an investigation to verify his claims. The patriarch couldn't ignore the opinions of the family's vassals, making the investigation a necessary process. Knox greeted the patriarch and paid his respects, to which the patriarch instructed him to rise. The patriarch acknowledged that Knox's actions were wrong, but as the patriarch, it was his duty to give credit where it was due, even if it belonged to someone considered a good-for-nothing. He had summoned Knox to discuss his reward and made a surprising offer. He would fulfill one request of Knox's, no matter what it was. Knox was shocked by the patriarch's words, questioning whether it was a trap, and feeling as if he had been metaphorically shot or betrayed. Nevertheless, Knox asked if he could request anything. The patriarch assured him that he could ask for anything, emphasizing his role as the patriarch of Reinhafer and swearing upon the long-standing history of the Black Sword to fulfill Knox's request. Knox looked at the patriarch, realizing that he was serious about granting his request. The patriarch, however, reminded Knox that if his request was too ridiculous, he might change his evaluation of him, expressing his trust that Knox wouldn't make a foolish request. Knox smiled and replied, assuring the patriarch that he understood, and requested some time to consider his options. The patriarch agreed and granted Knox permission to leave the estate, but reminded him that he should not get into trouble as he did previously. Knox responded with a respectful smile, affirming his understanding and loyalty to the Reinhafer family. The next day, Knox stood outside the estate as Talia was about to depart. Talia smiled and enthusiastically suggested meeting at Eldine Academy the next time they saw each other. However, Knox didn't even look at her and remained silent. Talia, undeterred, repeated her statement with a smile, expressing her anticipation of seeing him again. Knox still kept his face turned away and didn't respond. Head butler advised Knox, telling him that he should answer when a lady asks him a question. Knox let out a sigh and reluctantly agreed. He then turned to Talia and informed her that they would meet again only if she became a full-fledged knight before that. Talia, brimming with motivation, questioned the meaning of becoming a full-fledged knight. Knox, teasingly, stated that his definition of a knight was someone who wouldn't get scared even after encountering a super-huge spider. Suddenly, a punch landed on Knox's stomach, and he thought to himself that saying wolves might have been a better choice than spiders. Talia confidently declared that she would return after becoming a full-fledged knight and warned Knox to prepare his head for her. Knox was shocked by her statement and wondered if she intended to kill him. Emma, a maid of the Styliner family, stepped forward and bowed to Knox, thanking him for everything, and especially for saving young Miss Talia. Knox sighed and dismissed her gratitude, stating that he hadn't saved Talia intentionally and telling her to stop bothering him and leave. As Talia left in her carriage, Knox pondered the fact that one person was now gone from his life. He couldn't help but feel that he was slowly getting used to this strange life, even though he didn't know the exact reason. He found himself somewhat enjoying it. Just then, a message appeared indicating that he had 146 days left due to his terminal illness. Knox realized that he had no time to rest. A few days later, Rona informed Knox that he needed to hire a new maid and new servants. Knox, thinking about the idea of getting a new maid, was interrupted by the entrance of head butler Rodwell into the room. Rodwell greeted Knox and informed Knox that Eldine Academy had sent a maid in training to assist him, and from that day onwards, she would be serving him. The maid greeted Knox and stated that her name was Gitri de la Villa, emphasizing that she would be his exclusive maid from that point forward. Knox acknowledged her introduction and introduced himself as Knox von Reinhafer. However, he couldn't help but activate his skill, allowing him to see Gitri's status window. The window displayed her name, sex, age, species, main element, and various attributes. Notably, her passive skill was listed as perfect housework, and her active skill was mentioned as monitoring player based on orders of Theo von Reinhafer. Knox took note of the last line, indicating that Gitri was monitoring him based on orders from Theo von Reinhafer. Knox received a message notifying him that due to the terminal illness, he had only 140 days left to live. He sighed, reflecting on how time seemed to pass rapidly when faced with limited time. However, he found a silver lining in the fact that he was growing stronger despite the severe penalty of his condition. Soon he would be admitted into the prestigious Eldian Academy. Rona informed him that he would start attending the Eldian Academy in 2 months. She asked if he felt nervous about it. Knox questioned if she was happy that he would be leaving this place for the academy. Rona was taken aback by this sudden question, but she soon became emotional and stated that she had already started missing him. Seeing her overreacting, Nox told her that she didn't need to act like that. He wouldn't reduce her salary. Nox thought that he didn't even have time to bully Rona. Within the next 2 months, if he didn't increase his stats even by a little, then he would definitely not be able to survive the academy. Eldian was the Empire's finest academy, which gathered monstrously strong cadets from all corners of the country. After surviving rigorous training and entering the main storyline, he must take on the role of the villain, Nox von Reinhofer. Nox felt frustrated, as he found everything to be incredibly challenging. Rona informed him that he needed to hire a new maid and servants. Nox pondered the idea of having a maid, and coincidentally, head butler Rodwell entered the room, informing him that Eldian Academy had sent a maid in training to assist him. The new maid, Gitri de la Villa, introduced herself with great enthusiasm, assuring Nox of her dedication to supporting him to the best of her abilities. However, Nox couldn't help but notice her status window, indicating that she was monitoring him under orders from Theo von Reinhofer. This realization made him apprehensive, as it seemed they wouldn't allow him to leave this place comfortably. Theo von Reinhofer was considered one of the most formidable antagonists and one of the strongest beings in the world. When contemplating how he attained his current position, many speculate whether it was solely due to his exceptional swordsmanship. Theo was so skilled that few doubt the significance of his swordsmanship in his rise to power. However, the primary reason for Theo's ascent to the top of the Reinhofer family was his innate suspicion of everything and everyone around him. Theo stood before Gitri and he expressed great expectations for her this time. Gitri acknowledged his words with a respectful, "Yes, sir." Theo had learned that Gitri had been pushed back in the line of succession within the Lavilia family, and he promised that if she performed well in her current role, the Reinhofer family would spare no efforts to support her in the succession. Gitri told Theo that she would assist young Master Nox with all her heart. However, to her surprise, she received a cold and stern no from Theo in response. She was greatly startled by the chilling aura emanating from him. However, she managed to compose herself and remarked that she would be monitoring him strictly and reporting every single detail to him. Theo's intimidating presence lingered even after Gitri left his office, as she found his words echoing in her mind. "Don't forget who your master is." Looking at her pendant, Gitri understood that she must not falter from this point on. Nox lay on his bed, contemplating the spy that Theo had sent to monitor him. He believed Theo's intention was to confirm whether the person within him was truly Nox or not. He knew that demon possession was a common occurrence within the inner lunatic, and in the original storyline, Nox's body had been taken over by the number 1 demon, Baal. Nox needed to ensure that his true identity remained hidden. Getting up, Nox reassured himself that everything would be fine as long as Theo didn't uncover his true self. However, he couldn't shake the worry that stemmed from Gitri. He recognized her as the problem. Gitri de la Villa had a tragic past. Although not directly involved in the main storyline, she was originally meant to become the next head of the Lavilia family. But her parents were killed by her uncle, causing her to lose her position as the next head. To escape from her family's darkness, she became a maid of the Reinhofer family. On the surface, she appeared cheerful and always smiled. But inside, she was deeply scarred and broken, on the verge of collapsing. The revelation haunted Nox. He knew that in the course of the story, Gitri was destined to commit suicide before the first part of the main storyline even began. This left him facing a moral dilemma. Should he try to change the storyline and save someone who was supposed to be dead? Such a decision could have serious consequences for him, possibly putting his life at risk. The next day, Nox gathered Rona and Gitri before him. He announced that they would be hunting monsters within the forest in the territory. Rona was shocked by the unexpected request and exclaimed in surprise. Rona, with a worried expression, tried to take a leave of absence, claiming that she was sick. On the other hand, Gitri calmly nodded in agreement to his order. Rona caught Gitri's hand with teary eyes and pleaded with her not to agree to everything. Nox observed that it was normal for a maid to be scared of hunting monsters, as the request was quite absurd. However, he noticed that Gitri gave an immediate answer without hesitation. Addressing Rona, Nox pointed out that he knew she had used up all her leaves and therefore couldn't take a sick leave today. He playfully reminded her that he was a good-for-nothing and threatened to reduce her salary if she didn't follow his orders. Rona tearfully asked whether she should bring a bow or a sword for the hunt. G-Tree then asked Nox if she should inform Sir Rodwell about his departure from the estate before starting to prepare. Nox agreed, realizing that his top priority now was to increase his lifespan since he was now free to go anywhere. With their preparations in place, Nox, accompanied by his two maids Rona and G-Tree, embarked on their quest to hunt monsters. A few days later, the once ominous missing child's forest now appeared like any normal forest after being cleared. As Nox ventured deeper into the forest, a wolf suddenly leaped at him. Reacting swiftly, Nox readied his sword and struck down the attacking wolf. In doing so, he received a message stating that he had absorbed a small amount of the Grey Wolf's life force, granting him an additional 2 hours of life. Breathing heavily, Nox contemplated his recent hunt. He wondered if he had managed to eliminate all the wolves in the area, considering that a single hunt had given him 2 hours of life. He saw this as a successful hunt and felt pleased with his accomplishment. G-Tree approached Nox with a water bottle and pointed out that an hour had passed since he began the hunt. She questioned if he was still not tired. Nox realized that he hadn't activated the Hour of the Genius skill, which caused the hunt to take longer than expected. As a result, he had only earned 1 hour of life instead of 2. Nox knew that the calculations wouldn't be perfect, but the outcome was far from what he had hoped for. He acknowledged that he couldn't keep killing monsters every single hour. Moreover, he was concerned about the diminishing number of monsters in the vicinity. Over the past few days, his continuous hunting had significantly reduced their population. This posed a threat to his plan of living a prosperous life, as the scarcity of monsters jeopardized the source of his additional life hours. Sighing, Nox admitted that the lack of monsters in the area was indeed a major problem. G-Tree, however, found it surprising that Nox saw this as a problem, as most people would think he had become peculiar if they heard his concern. Observing the rising sun, Nox decided it was time to return to the mansion for the day. G-Tree offered to prepare warm bathwater for Nox, ensuring it would be at a comfortable temperature. Nox internally acknowledged her capability as a support genius and agreed to take a bath before dinner, requesting the timing to be appropriate. G-Tree smiled, acknowledging Nox's request, and assured him that she would handle the task. During this interaction, Rona expressed her concern, reminding him not to forget about her. She mentioned that she would clean up his room. Nox was surprised, but allowed her to do as she pleased. As Rona eagerly prepared to leave, G-Tree couldn't help but smile. Suddenly, Nox called out to her and said that he wanted to ask her a question. He then posed an unexpected inquiry, asking whom she served. G-Tree was taken aback by the question, uncertain how to respond. Nox knew that G-Tree had the support genius trait, but he was also aware of the fact that no matter how beautiful or great a sword is, if he can't use it, then he won't hesitate to throw it away. G-Tree hesitated to reply, but Nox seemed to understand her unspoken answer. G-Tree tried to explain that she hadn't even said anything yet. She attempted to continue, but Nox interrupted and reassured her that he already knew what she wanted to say. He appreciated her honesty and stated that he had no intention of interrogating her any further. Nox expressed gratitude toward her and declared that, irrespective of whom she served, he would consider her as part of his own. As Nox started to walk away, he reassured G-Tree that she could also make use of him if necessary. He believed that a relationship based on mutual trust might not be necessary, and he was content with both of them using each other for their respective purposes. In Nox's mind, the bond he shared with G-Tree seemed to be more of a mutually beneficial arrangement rather than relying solely on trust, reflecting his pragmatic outlook on their relationship. That night, Rona lay on her bed, eating candies and expressing her frustration about Nox. She complained that he always said things like, "If you don't run together with me, what fun would it be for me to train?" during their training sessions. She questioned whether he was going too far with his demands. G-Tree looked at Rona and agreed with a laugh. She then thought about the rumors she had heard about young Master Nox being a changed person. While she initially dismissed these rumors as fabricated, the recent events made her question their authenticity. Nox had defeated the twins and secured his place in the academy. G-Tree thought that Nox was someone who was solidifying his standing within the family. He was totally different from her, having fallen all the way down despite being a legitimate successor. G-Tree pondered over Nox's statement from earlier that day, where he had told her to make use of him if needed. She wondered what he meant by that, and couldn't help but be curious about his intentions. Soon after, groundless rumors began spreading within the Reinhafer family. claiming that Jitri was expelled from her own family and no longer deserved to be a maid for the Reinhafer family. Jitri, with tears in her eyes, received a letter that only added to her distress. The letter accused her of being an incompetent family head who had sold out her family, resulting in the removal of her rights as a direct line descendant. Knowing that she wouldn't be able to remain in the Reinhafer family for long, Jitri accepted her fate. She acknowledged that the Reinhafer family was one of the top dark families, and that she, as a commoner who had lost her own family, had no right to serve them. She anticipated being cut off from the Reinhafer family soon, and believed that she would end up serving someone else soon. Jitri entered the kitchen with a warm smile and greeted the other maids, but they didn't respond to her. She realized that everyone had heard the rumors about her and was now looking at her with disdain. Despite being used to such treatment, it still weighed on her heart. Just then, Rona appeared behind her, cheerful as ever, and exclaimed that she had been searching everywhere for her. Rona eagerly pulled her along, and they started walking together. Jitri couldn't help but wonder if Rona was unaware of the rumors, or if she was simply pretending not to know. She questioned whether Rona genuinely considered her a friend. Regardless, Jitri recognized that what Rona was doing now was something foolish. From her perspective, she, Rona, and young Master Nox, all three of them, were doing foolish things. Meanwhile, Nox sat near a window, holding a letter in front of him. He knew that the end was approaching, not just for Jitri. Nox concluded that Theo had probably received a similar letter. He was aware that the crimes attributed to Jitri's father were all false and fabricated. However, he was also unable to help her because there was no way to know what butterfly effect would be caused just by him helping her survive. In the missing child's forest, Nox was on the hunt for monsters. With a swift swing of his sword, he effortlessly took down a menacing wolf. Rona and Jitri stood by, observing the scene. Rona noticed a coldness in Nox's eyes and commented on how he appeared harsher than he used to be in the past when he was more merciful. Jitri, intrigued by Rona's remark, asked if that was truly the case. This left Jitri feeling uneasy about the whole situation. Nox continued his killing spree without breaking a sweat, eagerly anticipating the appearance of something. He was well aware that in the missing child's forest, a hidden boss monster randomly shows up when only 20% of the regular monsters remain in the forest. He had planned to kill the hidden boss monster to boost his stats, but it looked like his plan was not going to work as the monster had still not appeared. However, something suddenly passed by his face, leaving him shocked. He swung his sword in response but didn't hit anything, and then realized that the hidden thing's speed was on a whole different level. Nox smiled, acknowledging that the hidden boss, an elite king wasp, was indeed challenging. He prepared to fight it, confident he could handle the battle. However, when Nox was momentarily distracted, Jitri noticed the wasp attacking and rushed to save him, taking the attack head-on. Nox wondered why Jitri had intervened since he believed he could have dealt with the attack himself. He questioned why she had saved him and pondered how many people would be able to run toward a monster that suddenly appeared. Nonetheless, Nox decided that he would use Jitri's actions to his advantage and protect her. In response to the situation, an angry expression appeared on Nox's face, and a message appeared, stating that the hour of the genius had been activated. Jitri recalled a memory from her childhood when she was crying, and her mother expressed concern about her constantly falling down. Her father agreed and mentioned that there has never been a day that Jitri's wounds on her knee were completely healed. That was what her parents had always told her. However, that doesn't simply apply to only her knee wounds, but also her heart wounds. She wondered if her parents were prophesying over her previously. She also remembered Nox questioning her about whom she serves, which made her reflect on her own allegiances. Suddenly, she recalled a chilling memory of her uncle killing her parents and claiming the family for himself with an evil smile. Voices echoed in her mind, repeating the question, "Who do you serve?" And, if needed, feel free to make use of me, because I too will make use of you. As Jitri opened her eyes slightly, she saw Nox panting heavily before her, calling out to her with concern in his voice. Nox had received a message saying that he had defeated the monster, and that special rewards would be given to him. However, he ignored the message, and instead reassured Jitri that everything was over, promising to take her back safely. Rona expressed concern and urged Nox to head back to the mansion quickly. Jitri observed Nox's expression and thought that he was lying. She questioned whether this was really the expression of someone who was just trying to make use of her. She wondered why she sensed a slight tremble and anger in his voice. Family head Theo read a letter and found it troubling. Head butler Rodwell confirmed that based on their investigation, the contents of the letter were true. The Lavilia family had decided to completely cut off Miss Jitri. Theo reflected on his initial plan to bring Jitri into their family and have him take over the Lavilia family. Since they had lost their previous head and were in an unstable state, he had thought that this would be the perfect time to take them over. With the involvement of Reinhafer, they should have been able to bring them into submission somehow. However, with the sudden expulsion of Jitri, their plans were rendered useless. Theo admitted that they can't do anything now, so he asked Rodwell for advice on what to do with Jitri. Rodwell remarked that if they placed a maid who didn't belong to any family besides Nox, they would be looked down upon within Eldane Academy. So he advised dealing with this quietly on their end. Theo expressed that he had similar thoughts. As they discussed what to do with Jitri, a butler interrupted with urgent news about Nox bringing back an injured maid who had been poisoned during the hunt. The maid's condition was critical, and Nox had used an expensive antidote without permission. Rodwell questioned the butler if Nox had used the Mandrake's purifying potion. The butler nodded in agreement, confirming his suspicion. Rodwell sighed and mentioned that it was actually an extremely expensive potion. Theo wondered if Nox had grown attached to the maid so quickly and expressed concern about the potential consequences of personal feelings in their plans. Rona called out to Jitri and was relieved to see her awake. Jitri, still recovering, wondered about what had happened and if Nox was safe. She questioned her decision to jump in front of the boss monster. Through her tears, Rona informed Jitri that Nox had used the Mandrake's antidote to save her life. The doctor had initially refused to administer the antidote, but Nox had forcefully threatened him, leaving him no choice but to use it unless he wanted to die. Jitri knew the value of Mandrake and questioned Nox's actions. She wondered whether Nox was truly only planning to use her. As she tried to get up on the bed, Rona expressed concern and advised her to rest more. Ignoring Rona's concerns, she inquired about Nox's whereabouts. Rona revealed that he had gone to look for the Chamberlain and had asked her to inform him once Jitri woke up. Rona prepared to leave and told Jitri that she would be back soon, also urging her to make sure to get plenty of rest. Once Rona left the room, Jitri walked toward her suitcase, contemplating her decision to leave. She packed her belongings, overwhelmed with feelings of unworthiness that made her believe she didn't deserve to stay. As she sorted through her things, she took out the pendant, which held a picture of her late parents. With a heavy heart, she removed the picture, deciding to leave the pendant behind along with a heartfelt letter expressing gratitude to Nox for saving her life and using the pendant to pay for the life-saving potion. As Jitri was about to leave, she encountered Nox in the hallway. He asked her where she was going right now. With a cold expression, he asked again, demanding to know where she was going. Nox's voice resonated with urgency as he confronted the doctor about the situation. He expressed his frustration at the doctor's apparent prioritization of the precious medicine over the critical condition of a dying person. The doctor responded hesitantly, explaining that he couldn't administer the medicine without permission from the patriarch. Nox's retort questioned the doctor's authority within the family hierarchy compared to his own. The doctor apologized in acknowledgement of his mistake. Unsatisfied, Nox made it clear that he intended to personally report this to his father and demanded the doctor to act promptly. The doctor complied, administering the potion to the unconscious Jitri. Rona, concerned about Jitri's well-being, inquired about her condition. The doctor reassured her that now that the poison had been neutralized, Jitri would recover. As Nox attempted to exit the room, Rona called out to him. Nox's response was curt, informing her to report directly to him once Jitri regained consciousness. Nox took an unexpected step to seek out family head Theo. Their conversation began with Theo remarking on the rarity of Nox seeking him out, speculating whether it had something to do with the maid. A message appeared before Nox, signaling the activation of a skill called the Master of Acting. Nox then reminded Theo that he had promised to grant him one wish, and Theo confirmed his agreement. Nox revealed his request and the name of the person he wanted as his wish, Jitri de Lovilia, who had been exiled from her own family. As Nox contemplated his decision, He realized that his actions might set off a chain of events that would impact the main story. Concerns about Theo's potential espionage seemed trivial compared to the gravity of his current realization. Nox recognized that Jitri's attempt to save him held the answer that she hadn't explicitly told him previously. The family head agreed to Nox's wish, expressing his willingness to make it happen. Nox, however, had one more matter to address. He acknowledged Theo's status as his father, and just then a warning message appeared, indicating that the master of acting was losing efficacy due to his agitated state. With a steely gaze, Nox expressed his frustration and requested Theo to stop toying with his people. Sometime later, Nox found himself facing Jitri in a hallway. He questioned her intentions and asked where she thought she was going. Jitri trembled, explaining that she intended to leave as she felt she no longer had a place there. She thanked Nox for everything he had done. Nox's inquiry persisted, asking why she was abandoning her responsibilities as his maid. Jitri admitted to being ordered by the patriarch to surveil Nox, even if it involved deceiving him. Tearfully, she questioned why Nox was trying to stop her, considering the extent of her deception and her lack of options. She wondered why he would want to hold her back despite her betrayal. In his thoughts, Nox pondered the contrast between the acting facade Jitri presented and the more genuine, resilient side he was witnessing now. He recognized her struggle and determination to persevere through difficult times. Nox's response to Jitri's guilt was unexpected. He acknowledged that people often deceive each other. Jitri voiced her concern that she had committed a grave offense against him. In response, Nox stated that was precisely why he was stopping her. After committing such a serious transgression against him, she wanted to leave without addressing it. So he asked her who had given her the authority to leave. Jitri was left shocked by his response. Nox then declared that she would be staying in this place. He expressed his disregard for her Lavilia family name and emphasized his need for her talents. Jitri was taken aback by his pronouncement. Nox reaffirmed his desire for her to stay by his side as his maid, until she repaid the offense of deceiving him. Jitri's eyes welled with tears of happiness as she accepted his offer, promising her loyalty and assistance until the end. With a smile, Nox welcomed her decision. Jitri took the conversation further by recalling a previous question he had asked her about whom she served. Nox confirmed that he had indeed asked her. Jitri questioned if he now knew whom she served. Nox smiled faintly and stated that he knew it now. Rona engaged in gossip with her colleagues while cleaning the floor. She recounted the dramatic event involving Nox threatening the doctor. However, her speech was cut short when Nox unexpectedly spoke up, scolding her for insulting him right in front of him. Rona was surprised to realize he had been listening all along. Nox's words were laced with sarcasm as he pointed out Rona's attempt to change the topic and avoid responsibility for insulting him. Rona quickly shifted the conversation, expressing concern for Jitri's well-being and offering to take over the task of laundry. She swiftly grabbed the laundry basket from Jitri's hands and hurriedly left the room, shouting that she would go dry the laundry. Frustrated, Nox sighed, complaining about Rona's consistent habit of causing trouble. Shifting gears, Nox addressed Jitri again. He brought up his upcoming enrollment in the Eldane Academy, a plan that involved them going together. Jitri confirmed her awareness and mentioned that she had already made preparations for it. She listed various items she had gathered, including basic tools, books, medicine, emergency items, clothing, and the cadet uniform for external trips. In his thoughts, Nox acknowledged her change in behavior. He appreciated that she no longer forced herself to put on a smile in front of him, allowing for a more genuine interaction. He preferred this authentic dynamic, one free of unnecessary compliments and superficial conversations. He mused that even in tough situations they wouldn't betray each other, emphasizing a sense of trust. Jitri asked if Nox was truly all right, as there were negative rumors circulating about him lately. This caught Nox's attention, and he seemed surprised by the notion of worse rumors than the ones already in existence. Curious, Nox inquired about these negative rumors, prompting Jitri to reveal that there was a rumor suggesting that Nox was keeping her as his maid because he had feelings for her. Nox reacted with a mixture of surprise and contemplation. Internally, he reflected on the fact that he was feeling embarrassed about playing the role of Nox and creating such rumors. He apologized to Jitri for inadvertently involving her in the rumors, to which she reassured him that her intention in sharing this information was to make sure he wasn't uncomfortable due to the gossip. Knox acknowledged his infamous reputation, describing himself as the useless and foolish youngest son of the family. Jitri tried to downplay it, but Knox warned her not to lie, threatening to fire her. Jitri then mentioned having heard other rumors about Knox, including ones that labeled him as perverted. She questioned if those rumors were true. Knox's thoughts wandered as he considered his evolving image. He noted that while he was previously seen as a reckless and weak individual, he now seemed to be perceived as a capable troublemaker. Despite this, he understood the need to strike a balance. He recognized his role as a villain, aiming to let the protagonist shine. He emphasized that he wasn't the protagonist of Inner Lunatic. Knox decided to steer the conversation away from the rumors and shifted the focus to a task he had in mind. He explained to Jitri that, just like her, he needed to prepare in order to survive at Eldine Academy. Jitri inquired about what kind of preparation he was talking about. Knox thought to himself that Jitri's personality trait of being single-minded indicated her unwavering trust in a particular person, presumably him. He considered it advantageous to share some of his plans with her, as her trust would make it easier to enlist her help. Knox elaborated that he was planning to study magic before entering the academy and asked for her assistance in this endeavor. Jitri appeared surprised by his intention, pointing out that practicing magic was illegal in the empire they lived in. Knox confirmed that he was aware of the illegality and was still determined to proceed. He responded nonchalantly, stating that he was used to acting recklessly. Jitri expressed her understanding and acknowledged that Knox likely had a reason for making this decision. She agreed to help him by looking for basic books on magic that could assist him in his studies. Knox noted her competence and seemed content with her willingness to help. Suddenly, they both heard voices in the distance, urgently urging someone to move quickly and prepare. Knox became curious about the commotion and wondered what could be causing such a ruckus. He glanced out of the window and saw a carriage parked outside. A voice was instructing workers to ensure that preparations were done properly, announcing the return of someone named Young Master Grain. Knox recognized the name. Grain had returned after graduating from Eldin Academy. He realized that he had almost forgotten about this important event. With a smile, Knox thought about the opportunity this presented for him to extend his life. He informed her that he would need to go on a distant mission for the time being. Jitri questioned him about what he was up to now. Later at the dinner table, the family head, Theo, toasted Grain's successful graduation from Eldine Academy. Grain thanked his father for the acknowledgement. Knox observed his older brother, Grain, who was Theo's second son. Using his special skill, Knox activated Grain's status window, revealing some basic information about him. Grain was a 16-year-old human with a main element of darkness. Knox contemplated Grain's personality traits, describing him as a lustful man who becomes cheerful when surrounded by materialistic women, and is an opportunist. He acknowledged that Grain's true nature remained concealed because Knox himself was perceived as an even worse good-for-nothing. He recognized Grain's political adeptness and his ability to get along with others in the realm of politics. Grain had used his talents in playing politics to easily graduate from the academy. Eldine was very famous, but also very difficult to graduate from. The academy had stringent admission exams, with less than 1,000 individuals passing, and only half of those admitted managing to graduate. Family head inquired about Grain's upcoming departure to Chaders. Grain confirmed that he would be leaving for Chaders, a territory to the south, in 3 days. The family head deduced that Grain's mission would likely involve monster hunting, considering the time of year. Knox's thoughts delved into the details of Chaders. It was a neutral territory located beyond the Reinhofer family's land. It bordered Tajilin to the east, a region with an undeveloped desert along its borders that was infested with monsters. Grain's mission from the Imperial family was to counter the monster wave in Chaders. Completing this mission was essential for becoming a recognized knight of the Imperial family. Grain discussed the situation, explaining that Chaders became overrun by monsters during winter and that the Imperial family wanted to take preemptive measures against them. The family head emphasized the importance of not bringing shame to the Reinhofer name and reminded Grain of the potential impact on neighboring areas. Internally, Knox acknowledged that the Chaders mission held a significant role in the overarching story. He saw it as more than just a simple monster hunting quest. It was intertwined with various complex storylines. Recognizing the potential benefits, he realized that his involvement in the Chaders subjugation was crucial to gain what he needed. Seizing the moment, Knox turned to Grain and expressed his desire to join the Chaders mission. Grain was clearly surprised by Nox's request to join the Chaders' mission. He questioned whether Nox truly understood what Chaders was like. Nox replied that he had heard about the area's intermittent monster attacks and the increasing forces of secret bandits. Grain mentioned that he had been hearing a lot about Nox recently, particularly about his involvement with clearing the missing child's forest alongside the second daughter of the Stillreiner family. Nox admitted that it was indeed true. Nox recognized that Grain possessed a skill called precise detection. This skill allowed him to discern the reasons behind someone's restlessness, and if the target's stats were lower than his own, he could quickly identify the underlying causes. This skill had transformed Grain into an expert in navigating the world and playing politics. As Grain continued to question Nox about his victory over the twins and his decision to hire a commoner maid, Nox's skill, Steel Mentality, activated, countering Grain's precise detection. Nox confirmed that all the rumors were indeed true. Grain sighed and acknowledged Nox's achievements, but his demeanor quickly shifted to a more contemptuous tone. He stated that he couldn't allow someone who hadn't even been admitted to Eldine Academy to join him on the mission. He expressed a preference to avoid being responsible for collecting Nox's corpse. Suddenly, the family head interrupted the conversation, getting up from his seat. Grain seemed taken aback by his father's interruption and awaited his response. The head of the family stated that he would serve as a guarantee that Nox would remain safe during the mission. He then turned to Grain and issued an order, telling him to bring Nox along on the mission. Grain reacted with defiance, exclaiming, "Father!" The family head's gaze turned cold, and he reiterated that it was an order. He shifted his attention to Nox and informed them that the family would provide the necessary supplies for the mission. The family head instructed them to make preparations for the departure within the next 3 days. Nox's thoughts raced, wondering why the family head had granted his permission so easily. He considered whether Theo, the family head, had some ulterior motive behind this decision. Grain's voice interrupted Nox's thoughts as he asked him what he was up to. Grain sighed and wondered if Nox had genuinely lost his sanity. Nox retorted, challenging that regardless of how absurd he might appear, he couldn't be any more insane than he had been before. Grain seethed with anger as he questioned if Nox was just joking with him. Suddenly, Grain grabbed Nox by the collar, expressing anger and warning Nox to be cautious. He hinted that it would be a pity if Nox got injured on a rare opportunity like the Chaders' mission. At that moment, someone entered the room, and the glass fell from their hand and exclaimed in shock. Nox turned and swiftly caught Jitri as she was falling. The video ends here. Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to receive updates on my next videos quickly and not miss any new content.